Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mr. Night Fear. I know many of you listen to these stories to help you fall asleep. So, before you get settled in, I'd love for you to leave a comment letting me know where you're listening from. And if you're enjoying the episodes, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's get comfortable, relax, and begin. I grew up in a quiet little town in Maine called Willow Creek. Folks there know each other, wave at every car, and lock their doors at night, but only out of habit, not fear. Or at least, that's how it used to be. When I moved back after my divorce, things felt heavier. Maybe it was just me. Maybe it was the cold. That fall had come fast, wind howling through leafless trees, mornings coated in frost, and the sky always gray like it was thinking of crying but never quite did. I took a job with the local sheriff's department. Nothing big. Just desk duty, mostly. Filing reports, updating missing pet logs, chatting with folks who came in about lost packages or noisy neighbors. I liked the quiet. That changed one Thursday evening in October. We got a call about strange lights coming from an old property at the edge of town, the Blue House on Willow Creek Road. Everyone knew it. No one lived there. Hadn't for years. Probably teens messing around, the sheriff mumbled, handing me the keys to the cruiser. Go check it out. Just a drive-by. So I went. The road there cuts through a small patch of woods. No streetlights. Just the occasional mailbox. My headlights flickered once, then steadied. I remember gripping the wheel tighter. The house came into view slowly. Pale blue, chipped paint, porch sagging like it was tired of standing. The windows were all dark except one, upstairs. A soft blue light pulsed behind the curtain. I parked at the curb and got out. Wind pushed through the trees, bringing with it the smell of wet leaves and something else, something sour, like old fruit left out too long. I radioed in. At the Willow Creek house. One light on. Doesn't look like a break-in. I'll take a closer look. No reply. I tried again. Still nothing. The porch steps creaked under my boots. The door was locked, but something told me it wouldn't be for long. As I turned to walk around the back, the front door slowly opened on its own. I stood there, not sure what to do. Then I stepped inside. The air was colder inside than out. My breath came in little white clouds. The house was empty, furniture covered in dusty sheets, wallpaper peeling like sunburned skin. Then I heard it. A voice. Faint. A child's voice. Don't go upstairs. It was so soft I thought I imagined it. But I froze. My flashlight flickered. I turned toward the staircase. The blue light from upstairs was stronger now, spilling faintly down the steps like water. I climbed slowly, one step at a time. The floor groaned beneath me, the way old houses do. When I reached the top, the hallway was empty. Just 5 doors. 4 closed. One cracked open. The blue light came from there. I walked to it and gently pushed the door. Inside was a small bedroom. Toys scattered on the floor. A wooden rocking horse in the corner. And sitting in the center of the room, an old CRT television, glowing blue with static. I hadn't seen a TV like that in years. It wasn't plugged in. The screen suddenly cleared. A face appeared. A woman. Pale. Hair soaked, hanging like seaweed. Her mouth moved like she was screaming, but no sound came through. Then, just for a second, she looked at me. The room went dark. I ran. Down the stairs, out the front door, into the cold air that now felt warm compared to whatever that was. I didn't stop running until I reached the cruiser. The engine didn't start at first. I tried again. It finally turned over. As I pulled away, I looked in the rearview mirror. All the windows in the house were glowing blue. Back at the station, I tried to report it. The sheriff looked at me like I'd lost it. "There's no blue house on Willow Creek Road," he said. I stared at him. "What are you talking about? It's been there for decades." He pulled out an old map. The space where the house stood? Empty. Vacant lot. I drove back the next day in the daylight. Nothing was there. Just trees and weeds. No foundation. No mailbox. No signs of life. But something caught my eye in the grass. A toy horse. Wooden. Weathered. It looked just like the one in the room. I don't tell this story often. People already think I'm a little off. Maybe I am. But I know what I saw. I know what I heard. That house was real. That blue light was real. And sometimes, late at night when I'm driving home, I take a little detour down Willow Creek Road. Just to see. And once, just once, I swear I saw that soft blue light flickering through the trees. What do you think it was? A glitch in time? A spirit caught in a loop? Or maybe, some places just remember things long after we forget. Red circle, red circle, red circle. Let me know when you're ready for the next story. I want to tell you a story that stayed with me. It happened in a quiet town called Aspen Hollow, the kind of place with one diner, one gas station, and neighbors who wave even if they don't know your name. Life moves slowly there, especially in the fall when the wind turns sharp and the trees look like they were on fire with red and orange leaves. Jake Monroe was a local deputy. Kind guy. 35, divorced, and still healing from it. He'd moved back into his parents' old home after they passed away, an old creaky place on the outskirts of town. He lived alone, unless you counted his dog, Rufus, who was getting too old to bark at much of anything. Jake wasn't the kind of man to get scared. He'd been through things, real things. But he told me once, there's something different about fear when it doesn't have a reason. I never understood what he meant, until later. It started after the first frost. Jake would hear knocking. Not on the front door. Not the back either. But from inside the house. At first, he thought it was just the pipes or maybe the wind. Old houses do that. He ignored it. But then, one night, it happened while he was watching TV. A loud knock-knock from the hallway closet just 10 feet away. Rufus sat up and growled, low and shaky. Jake stood, walked to the closet, and opened it slowly. Coats. Dust. Nothing more. But the air felt colder near it. Still, Jake chalked it up to drafts. Old homes breathe weird, right? The real change came after he found the Polaroid. He was cleaning out the attic on a rainy Sunday. Old boxes. Christmas lights. Childhood toys. Then he opened one box that didn't seem familiar. Inside was a camera and one photo. Just one. It was a picture of his house, his exact house, but there was a face in the upstairs window. A woman. Pale skin. White eyes. Mouth open like she was screaming. Jake dropped it. He didn't want to admit it, but the photo made his chest feel tight, like someone was squeezing him from the inside. That night, he heard footsteps upstairs. He grabbed his flashlight and his old service pistol. Rufus wouldn't go past the stairs. He just sat there, whining. Jake checked each room. Nothing moved. Nothing spoke. But in his bedroom, his closet door was wide open. He never left it open. The next morning, all the mirrors in the house were fogged over. He hadn't used the shower. A week passed. He tried to ignore it. But the house wouldn't let him. Sometimes, lights would flicker, but only when he looked in the mirror. The reflection always lagged just a little, like it was thinking before copying him. He called a friend, Lauren, who worked as a local historian. She told him something strange. His home was built over a burial ground, not a cemetery, just a forgotten place where unmarked graves were once moved, or supposedly moved. One of the names from those early settlers? Eleanor May Carter. A young woman who was accused of witchcraft and locked away in a root cellar. She died during a snowstorm. They say she scratched the walls until her fingers broke. No one ever found her body. Some people said she cursed the land. Jake didn't believe in curses. But he couldn't explain why every photo he took now on his phone, on his laptop, had the same woman's face in it. Behind him. In mirrors. Reflected in the dark windows. He smashed the old Polaroid. Burned the photo. But it didn't stop. The worst night was Halloween. He was alone, watching old movies, trying to feel normal. The wind outside howled like it was alive. The power cut out. Rufus hid under the couch, whining louder than Jake had ever heard. Then came the knocking again. Not from the walls. From the mirror in the hallway. Knock. 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 Jake walked over, heart pounding. He stared at the mirror. His own reflection blinked, but he didn't. Then, it smiled. And whispered, "Let me out." Jake didn't remember grabbing the hammer. Didn't remember smashing the mirror into 100 pieces. But when it shattered, the air around him grew so cold his breath fogged. He moved out the next day. Left everything behind. Rufus, the clothes, the furniture, he didn't take a thing. He lives in an apartment now. No mirrors. No pictures. He still wears his badge, but he won't step near Aspen Hollow again. I once asked him, "Do you think it was real?" He said, "I don't know. But every time I pass by a mirror, I still hold my breath." Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. Ethan moved back to Pinewood Hollow after his dad passed away. The town hadn't changed much. Same cold winds. Same quiet streets. Same old houses with chipped paint and overgrown lawns. He stayed in the farmhouse his dad left behind. It sat on the edge of town, near a cornfield that stretched forever. The neighbors were far. The nights were quiet. Too quiet sometimes. Ethan wasn't doing well. He had just gone through a rough divorce. He lost his job a month before his dad died. He came back here hoping for peace. But peace was hard to find. The house creaked a lot. The floors groaned when no one walked. The hallway light would flicker sometimes, even after he replaced the bulb. Behind the house was an old red barn. It hadn't been used in years. Boards were missing. The roof sagged. Crows nested near the top. The barn had no power, and Ethan didn't go near it. Until one night. It was early November. The air was sharp. The kind that stings your skin a little. Ethan was in the kitchen, making coffee around 9 p.m. Outside the window, past the yard, the barn glowed. There was a soft white light inside. It looked like a flashlight or an old bulb. It wasn't flickering. It was steady. Too steady. He stared at it for a while. Thought maybe it was the moon. But the moon was behind the clouds that night. He grabbed his coat and stepped outside. The grass crunched under his boots. The wind picked up. Dry leaves flew past his feet. The barn door stood open, swaying just slightly. "Hello?" Ethan called out. His voice felt too loud in the silence. No one answered. He stepped inside. His flashlight beam swept across dust, hay, and broken shelves. Tools rusted in the corners. The smell of old wood and metal filled his nose. But the light was gone. No bulb. No lantern. Just darkness. He left the barn confused. The next night, the light came back. Same glow. Same time. He didn't go out that night. Just watched from the kitchen, gripping his coffee mug tight. The third night, the light turned on again. And this time, he saw movement. A figure. Just standing still. In the center of the barn. Not facing him. Not moving. He blinked. Gone. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He asked a neighbor about the barn the next morning. The old woman, Mrs. Whitmore, looked at him carefully. "That barn's always been strange," she said. "Your granddad used to say it was cursed." "Said something lived in there?" Ethan laughed nervously. "Like what?" "Ghosts?" She didn't smile. "Not ghosts. Something worse. Something that waits." That night, the light didn't come on. But the barn door opened by itself. He watched it swing slowly in the wind, even though there wasn't much wind at all. Ethan locked every door and window. Turned all the lights on in the house. Slept with his coat on and boots next to his bed. At 2:17 a.m., his phone buzzed. No caller ID. Just one message. "Come back. We're not done." He dropped the phone. The screen blinked once, then went black. In the morning, the barn door was closed again. He tried to ignore it. Didn't go near the barn. Didn't look at it. But every night, the light came back. Sometimes bright. Sometimes barely there. Always at the same time. And always, he felt watched. One night, he heard scratching. On the back door. Like nails dragging slowly. He peeked through the curtain. No one. Then he heard footsteps. Inside the house. Heavy, slow, and wet. Like boots filled with water. He turned and saw the trail. Mud. Across the hallway floor. Leading from the front door to the basement. He followed it, shaking. The basement door was open. Inside, it was dark. Cold air rushed out like a breath. He flicked on the basement light. Nothing. Then he saw it. At the bottom of the stairs. A shape. Bent. Crooked. Watching him. And then it whispered. "You left me there." Ethan slammed the door and ran. Out the front door. Into the cold night. He turned toward the barn. It was glowing bright now. Too bright. Like something inside was burning. He thought he heard a scream. Or maybe a laugh. He didn't go back to the house that night. Or the next. He left Pinewood Hollow the next day. He never looked back. But sometimes, just after dark, his phone buzzes with a message. Same words. "Come back. We're not done." My name is Lauren. I live in a quiet town called Maple Hollow. Most people here know each other. Nothing big ever happens. But something strange happened to me last fall. Something I still think about at night. It started after I moved back home. I had just gone through a breakup. It wasn't messy, just sad. I needed space. So I stayed in my grandma's old house after she passed. It was an old two-story home at the end of a dead-end street. The kind with creaky floors and cold corners that never warmed up, no matter how high you turned the heat. I was alone, but I didn't mind it. At first. It was mid-October. The leaves were turning red and gold. The wind made that soft rustling sound that always reminded me of Halloween nights as a kid. I was sitting on the porch one evening, wrapped in a blanket, scrolling my phone. That's when I saw it. A red light. It was blinking slowly in the woods behind the house. Not fast like a car or a drone. Just a soft, steady pulse. I watched it for a few minutes. It didn't move. I figured it was nothing. Maybe some neighbor kid playing with a toy. I went inside and forgot about it. But the next night, it was back. Same spot. Same red pulse. I watched it from my bedroom window this time. The woods were quiet. No sound. No wind. It stayed for over an hour. I mentioned it to my neighbor, Mr. Dale, the next day. He was in his 60s, retired from the local police. He shook his head. Used to be kids back there playing with flashlights. But nobody's lived past that tree line since the marshals moved out. That was years ago. I asked him why they left. He just said they had a boy. Disappeared one October. Never found him. They left the next spring. That night, the light came back. Closer. I stood at the window, heart beating fast. I recorded it on my phone. But when I watched the video, there was nothing. Just black. No light at all. I tried again the next night. Nothing showed up. I stopped recording. Instead, I stood and stared. One night, I decided to shine my flashlight into the woods. I pointed it right where the red light was blinking. The light stopped. I waited. Then, it blinked again, once, closer this time. I dropped the flashlight. I shut the curtains and locked every door in the house. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept hearing things. Like small footsteps on the porch. A soft scraping sound. And once, a whisper. Just outside my window. I didn't have friends in town. I didn't tell anyone. It felt like no one would believe me. I stopped sitting on the porch. I closed all the curtains. I left lights on in every room. But the red light came back. Every night. Closer. Then one night, it was in the yard. Blinking slowly just beyond the tree swing. It cast this faint red glow on the grass, like blood in the moonlight. I wanted to scream. But I just stood there. Frozen. And I remembered something, my grandma's diary. I'd found it in a drawer when I moved in. Mostly recipes, shopping lists. But I remembered one strange entry. I went to look for it. October 1987. The red light is back. Henry says it's just a reflection. But I know what I saw. I won't go into the woods again. Ever. That was all it said. The next day, I went to the sheriff's office. Told them I thought someone was trespassing behind my house. They sent a young deputy to check it out. His name was Chris. He came by that afternoon and walked into the woods. He came back 20 minutes later. "There's no one out there," he said. "Just a broken bird feeder and a pile of old rocks." But that night, the red light came again. And it was on the porch. Blinking behind the glass of the back door. I didn't scream. I didn't move. I just stared, waiting for something to happen. And then, it stopped. No sound. No movement. The light was gone. I opened the back door the next morning. Nothing was there. Except something small sitting on the doormat. A toy police badge. Old. Rusty. Covered in dirt. I haven't seen the red light since. But I still think about it. Sometimes, when I look out into the trees, I feel like something is watching. Waiting. The toy badge? I keep it in a drawer. I don't know why. Maybe part of me wants to understand. Or maybe I already do. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I used to be a night shift patrol officer in a small town called Maple Hollow, just outside of Vermont's deep forest line. It's the kind of town where everyone knows each other, and nothing really happens until something does. Back then, I was going through a rough time. My dad had passed away the winter before, and I hadn't really dealt with it. My mom kept saying I was avoiding everything by staying busy. Maybe she was right. I didn't sleep well, so night patrols felt easier than being alone in my apartment. It was late October, just before Halloween. The air was cold and sharp. Leaves scraped across the streets like little whispers. The streetlights in Maple Hollow flicker sometimes, especially on Elm Street where most of the houses are old and creaky. One night, I was parked near an empty house that used to belong to an old couple. They passed years ago, and their places just sat there, falling apart slowly. The town couldn't sell it. Everyone said it gave them bad feelings. I wasn't doing much, just filling out a report on my laptop. That's when I noticed something strange. Across the street, behind the crooked old mailbox, I saw a man standing still. Not moving. Just standing. At first, I thought it was someone waiting for a ride or maybe a neighbor taking a smoke. But the way he stood, it was off. Arms stiff by his sides. Not even swaying in the breeze. I turned on the spotlight from the patrol car and aimed it at the mailbox. No one there. I got out and walked across the street. The cold hit me fast. My boots crunched on the frosty leaves. I looked around the mailbox, even shined my flashlight behind the bushes. Nothing. I shrugged it off and went back to the car. About 20 minutes later, I saw him again. This time, standing farther down the road, closer to the trees. Same shape. Same stillness. Just watching. I turned the car around quickly, headlights blasting into the trees. Again, nothing. It happened the next night too. Always the same. Always behind something: mailbox, tree, telephone pole. He never moved when I looked. But I could feel it. Someone was there. By the third night, I was starting to feel paranoid. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want to sound crazy. I just kept my phone recording whenever I was on patrol. That Friday, things got worse. Around 3 a.m., I got a call from dispatch. A neighbor on Elm Street reported hearing knocking. Repeated. From inside their basement. I drove over. It was an old man named Mr. Dalton. Lived alone. When I got there, he looked pale and shaken. He kept saying, "He's knocking again." I asked him who he meant. He said, "The man behind the mailbox. He comes to the window sometimes. He watches." I felt a chill crawl up my back. He swore he hadn't told anyone that before. I checked his basement. It smelled like wet wood and dust. I looked around with my flashlight. Nothing down there. No signs of a break-in. But when I climbed the stairs to leave, I heard it. Knock. 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 From the tiny basement window. I froze. It wasn't loud. Just a slow, steady tap. I ran back down, but no one was there. I went outside. Checked the side of the house. It had rained earlier, and the mud was soft. There were footprints. Barefoot. Leading from the woods to the window and then vanishing. I took a photo. Sent it to myself. But when I checked my phone later, the photo was gone. Just a black screen. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept checking my apartment windows. Closing the blinds. Locking everything twice. My cat wouldn't stop staring at the door. I kept hearing things. Light tapping. Creaking. Whispers that might have been the wind. The next day, I went to talk to the town historian. Her name's Linda. She's lived in Maple Hollow for over 60 years. When I told her what was happening, her face dropped. "You've seen him, haven't you?" she whispered. I nodded slowly. She pulled out a box of old papers and handed me a newspaper clipping from 1953. Local man found dead behind Elm Street mailbox. He had been a mailman. Worked for the town post office. Quiet. Lived alone. One day, someone found him sitting behind the mailbox, leaning against it like he'd just sat down and died. Heart failure. No history of illness. Since then, folks had reported seeing a man by that mailbox. Always watching. Always silent. Linda said, he only shows himself to people who are already haunted by something. That line hit me harder than anything. I hadn't told her about my dad. Or how lost I'd felt lately. It made me think, was this thing really out there? Or was it something I brought with me? I stopped doing night patrol after that. Requested a different shift. But every now and then, especially around Halloween, I drive by Elm Street again. And sometimes, just sometimes, I catch a glimpse. A shape behind the mailbox. Just standing. Still. Watching. The night air was cold and still in the small town of Millwood. I had just finished my shift at the local police station, the fog creeping low over the quiet streets. My name is Sarah, and I'd lived in Millwood all my life. The kind of place where everyone knows your name, but sometimes, that closeness feels like it traps you. Lately, I'd been feeling off. Ever since my husband left, the house felt emptier. The silence was heavier. My phone, always buzzing before, now sat dark on the kitchen counter. Social media used to be my escape, but now, I avoided it. Too many strange messages, weird posts I didn't understand. Sometimes, I get texts from numbers I didn't know, just static, or soft whispers I couldn't make out. It felt like someone was watching me, but no one was there. On this October night, a cool wind rattled the old wooden windows of my house. The streetlight outside flickered, casting strange shadows that danced on the walls. I brewed a cup of tea, the steam smelling faintly of cinnamon and something else, like wet leaves in earth after rain. The wind pushed against the door, making it creak, and for a moment, I thought I heard a soft tapping from the porch. I told myself it was nothing. Just the house settling. But the feeling stuck. That night, I decided to check my phone one last time before bed. There it was again, a message from an unknown number. This time, just one word, here. My heart raced. I called the number, but only a low hum answered. The kind that makes your skin crawl. I put the phone down, hands shaking. Then, the lights flickered violently and went out. The room plunged into darkness, the only sound the quiet hum of my breathing. I reached for the flashlight on the nightstand. The beam sliced through the dark, landing on the corner of the room where the old mirror hung. I noticed something strange. My reflection wasn't moving with me. It stayed still, eyes locked on mine but not blinking. I blinked hard, and the reflection smiled a slow, crooked grin that I didn't return. I gasped, dropping the flashlight. The room plunged into darkness again. I heard footsteps. Slow, heavy, coming from the hallway. My breath hitched. I wanted to call out, but my voice caught in my throat. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. Then, a soft whisper, "Sarah." I didn't move. The door handle turned slowly. The door creaked open. No one was there. But on the floor, I saw my phone screen lit up with another message, "Don't look back." My heart pounded. I wanted to run, but my feet felt glued to the floor. Then, the power flickered back on. The lights hummed alive. I looked around. Everything was normal. Too normal. I sat down, shaking, trying to steady my breath. Was I losing my mind? Or was something else in my house? The next day, I told my friend Chris about the night. He's the kind of guy who believes in logic, not ghosts. But even he looked uneasy. That evening, we decided to check the house together. We walked through each room, the floorboards creaking underfoot. Chris joked about haunted houses, trying to lighten the mood, but I could tell he was watching every shadow carefully. In the living room, the old radio suddenly turned on, static buzzing loudly before cutting out. We stared at each other. Then, a picture frame fell off the wall. It shattered on the floor. Chris bent down to pick up the pieces and found something written on the back in shaky handwriting, "Help me." My blood ran cold. We left the house that night, locking the door behind us. Since then, strange things kept happening. Phones buzzing with static, whispers just out of hearing, shadows that moved where no one stood. I don't know if it's my mind, or if the house holds something dark. What do you think? Have you ever felt watched in a place that should be safe? Or seen shadows that weren't yours? Maybe some places remember us, long after we've gone. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. The small town of Maplewood was the kind of place where everyone knew your name. Quiet streets lined with old wooden houses creaked in the cold autumn wind. The streetlights flickered like they were tired, casting soft shadows on the foggy roads. It was Halloween season, and the smell of damp leaves mixed with faint smoke from chimneys filled the air. Sarah, a local schoolteacher, had moved back to Maplewood a few months ago. She was still adjusting after losing her mother earlier that year. The quiet town was supposed to help her heal, but some nights, the loneliness pressed in heavy. She often felt watched, even when no one was around. One October evening, after grading papers late into the night, Sarah's phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "Do you see them too?" She frowned. Maplewood was small, but prank texts were common around Halloween. She didn't reply. Instead, she glanced outside her window. The street was empty, but the fog curled thickly around the street lamp at the corner. Something felt off, like a cold breath brushing her neck. Sarah's apartment was old, with wooden floors that creaked with every step. The heating rattled softly, and outside, the wind howled low. She decided to call her friend Mike, the town's deputy, to share the weird message. Mike sounded calm but serious. "Sarah, you're not the first to get that message. A few people have. Nobody knows where it's coming from." That night, Sarah set her phone on the kitchen table, determined to ignore it. But at midnight, her phone lit up again. The screen showed a live video. She stared in shock. The camera was pointed at her apartment window. She could see her own reflection, and just behind her, a dark shadow flickered. Her heart hammered. She grabbed the phone and spun around, but the room was empty. Sarah tried to shake it off as a trick of light. Maybe her mind playing games. The next day, she told Mike everything. He promised to check the area for any strange activity. Later that evening, as the fog thickened and streetlights flickered, Sarah heard knocking at her door. She peeked through the peephole. No one. She opened the door a crack. Empty hallway. Her breath caught when she noticed muddy footprints on her porch, leading away into the mist. Back inside, she sat trembling. The power flickered, and the TV turned on by itself, displaying static. Suddenly, a faint whisper echoed, "Look behind you." Sarah froze, then slowly turned. Nothing. She decided to record everything on her phone. Hours passed with strange noises, soft footsteps in the hallway, doors creaking open and closed, and that whisper returning now and then. The following day, Mike came by. He brought a small charm, an old talisman from the local church, saying, "Keep this close. It might help." Sarah clutched it tightly that night. Around 2 a.m., her phone buzzed again. Another live video. This time, the camera panned slowly across her living room to a corner shadow. A dark figure stood there, still, silent, watching. Sarah's voice shook as she whispered, "Who are you?" The figure didn't move. Suddenly, the video cut out. Morning came with thick fog and a heavy silence. Sarah and Mike decided to visit the old Maplewood Asylum on the edge of town, the source of many local legends. People said it was haunted by restless spirits. As they walked through the crumbling halls, Sarah felt a strange mix of fear and calm, like the building was holding its breath. Mike explained, the messages, the videos, they started after someone tried to burn down the asylum last year. Some say the spirits got angry. In one room, Sarah found a dusty mirror cracked in the middle. Her reflection blurred and twisted, and for a moment, she thought she saw someone standing behind her. She blinked. Nothing. Walking back outside, the wind howled, carrying distant whispers. Sarah felt eyes on her, but when she looked around, only fog greeted her. That night, back home, the messages stopped. The shadows faded. The house felt lighter. Sarah sat by the window, clutching the talisman, wondering if the spirits had finally found peace or if they were still watching, waiting. What do you think the shadow really wanted? Have you ever felt watched when no one was there? Sometimes, the quiet hides the loudest secrets. The town of Willow Creek was quiet most nights. On the cold edge of autumn, the wind would whistle through the trees, making the old wooden houses creak like they were whispering secrets. Streetlights flickered down foggy roads, casting soft pools of light onto cracked sidewalks. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other, and stories were passed down about strange happenings in the nearby forest. Jake had lived in Willow Creek his whole life. At 28, he was the town's new sheriff, trying to keep peace while carrying the weight of his own loneliness. His wife had passed away 2 years ago, and since then, Jake found himself wrapped in silence more than company. The old farmhouse on the edge of town was where he called home now, a creaky place full of memories and shadows. One chilly October evening, Jake sat on his porch wrapped in a thick blanket, staring out into the fog. His phone buzzed softly. He glanced at it, a message from an unknown number. "Do you remember her?" Jake's heart skipped. He didn't recognize the number. He didn't know who her was. The wind stirred, carrying the faint scent of pine and something else, something faintly sweet and bitter at the same time. Jake shivered, pulled his jacket tighter, and put the phone down. But the message stayed in his mind, and he found himself wondering who sent it and what it meant. That night, as the fog thickened, Jake's old farmhouse felt colder. The creaks in the walls grew louder, echoing in the empty rooms. When he finally went to bed, the soft glow of his phone lit up the room again. Another message, this time just a picture, an old photo of a little girl standing in front of a house Jake didn't recognize. But her eyes looked familiar, like someone he had seen in a dream. Jake tried to shake the feeling that something was wrong. He told himself it was a prank, or maybe a glitch. But then his phone rang, and a voice whispered on the other end, "She's waiting." The days after that were strange. Jake's phone kept buzzing with messages and calls from unknown numbers, each more cryptic than the last. At times, the messages seemed to come from different people, sometimes a man, sometimes a woman, but always about her or the house. One evening, after a long shift at the station, Jake decided to check the old forest on the outskirts of town. Local kids said strange things happened there, shadows moving just out of sight, eerie sounds, and a haunted cabin deep inside. Jake wasn't sure what he was looking for, but he hoped it would answer the questions haunting his mind. The forest was thick with fog. Every step Jake took was muffled by fallen leaves. The cold air smelled damp and alive. As he moved deeper, the creaking trees seemed to lean closer, whispering his name on the wind. Then, through the mist, Jake saw it, a small cabin, old and rotting. The door hung crooked on its hinges. A faint glow came from inside. Jake's breath caught. He pushed open the door slowly. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else, the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. On a rickety table sat a music box, its tiny key slowly turning on its own. A soft melody floated through the room, sad and sweet. Suddenly, Jake heard footsteps behind him. He spun around, but no one was there. Just shadows dancing in the flickering light. His phone buzzed again. This time, a text, "She's here." Jake's skin prickled. He wanted to leave, but his feet felt stuck to the floor. The shadows seemed to close in, and the music box slowed until it stopped with a final, eerie chime. Jake stumbled out of the cabin and ran through the trees, heart pounding. The fog swallowed the cabin behind him, like it had never been there. Back home, Jake locked every door and window. But the strange messages didn't stop. Sometimes, late at night, he would hear faint whispers through the phone, voices calling out names he didn't recognize. The town whispered too. People talked about a ghost in the woods, a lost child, a curse on the old farmhouse. Jake didn't know what to believe anymore. But he knew one thing, something from the past was reaching out, and it wasn't done with him yet. One night, staring at the phone screen, Jake asked himself, "What do you want from me?" The screen went black. Have you ever felt like someone was watching you, even when you were alone? What would you do if the past started calling your name? I moved to a small town called Maplewood last fall. It's quiet here, quiet in a way that feels like the wind is always watching. I found a little old farmhouse on the edge of town. It looked empty for years. The wooden porch creaked when I stepped on it, and the paint was chipped and faded. The smell of damp earth and fallen leaves filled the air. I needed a fresh start. After losing my job and going through a tough breakup, I wanted peace. But peace was hard to find in a place like this. The first night, I heard the wind howl through the trees. It sounded almost like voices whispering. The streetlights down the dirt road flickered like they couldn't decide whether to stay on or off. I told myself it was just the wind and my mind playing tricks. I was still getting used to the internet here. The connection was weak, and sometimes my phone wouldn't work at all. One night, I sat on the porch, scrolling through social media, trying to distract myself. That's when my phone screen flickered and went black. I thought it died. Then, suddenly, a message popped up on the screen, "Why are you alone?" My heart jumped. I didn't know who sent it. I tried to reply, but the phone shut off again. I told my neighbor, Mrs. Reynolds, an older woman who lived 2 houses down. She looked at me with tired eyes and said, "That house has history. People say it's watched by something." I laughed it off, but inside, I was scared. Days passed, and strange things kept happening. Doors I had locked would be open in the morning. Footsteps echoed in the hall when I was alone. At night, shadows moved just out of sight. Once, I heard my name whispered softly from the basement. But when I went down, no one was there. I started feeling like I was never really alone. One evening, a storm rolled in. The wind slammed against the windows, and the house groaned. I sat by the fireplace, trying to stay calm. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another message: you shouldn't trust the light. I didn't know what to make of it. Was it someone playing a joke? Or something else? I decided to check the basement for the first time. The stairs were dark and smelled of mold. As I turned on the light, it flickered and went out. I fumbled for my flashlight. The beam landed on old boxes covered in dust. One box was open, and inside was a music box. It was old and rusty but still wound tight. I opened it. A soft, eerie tune played. The melody made my skin crawl. Suddenly, the basement light flickered back on. In the corner, a dark figure stood just beyond the reach of the flashlight. It had no face, just a shadow. I froze. The air turned cold. The music box stopped playing. I ran upstairs and locked the basement door behind me. That night, I barely slept. I wondered if the shadow was real or just my fear. The next morning, I asked Mrs. Reynolds about the music box. She said, that music box belonged to a girl who lived here long ago. They say she vanished one winter night, and her spirit never left. I asked, do you think that's the shadow I saw? She nodded slowly. Maybe. Sometimes, the past clings to a place like moss on stone. Weeks went by, and the strange messages stopped. But I still felt watched. I stopped trusting my phone. The flickering lights, the cold spots, they stayed. One night, I sat on the porch under a sky full of stars. The wind was calm. I thought about what happened. What do you think that shadow wanted? Was it the girl's spirit trying to reach out? Or something darker? Have you ever felt like someone or something was watching you when no one else was around? I still live in that house. And sometimes, when the wind is just right, I swear I hear the soft melody of a music box carried on the breeze. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The night was cold and quiet in the small town of Pine Lake. I had just moved into an old wooden house at the edge of the neighborhood. The house creaked with every breeze, and the streetlights flickered like they were about to go out. It was late October, and the smell of damp leaves mixed with the sharp scent of burning wood from nearby chimneys. Halloween was just days away. My name is Megan. I'm in my late 20s and had recently lost my mother. Moving here was supposed to help me find some peace, away from the busy city and all its noise. But instead, I felt more alone than ever. The first few nights were quiet. I would sit by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching the fog roll over the empty streets. My phone kept buzzing with messages from friends, but I didn't have the energy to answer. I was tired and scared, not just from the loss, but from strange things I couldn't explain. One evening, just as the sun disappeared behind the hills, I heard a soft tapping at my window. It was faint, like a finger lightly drumming on the glass. I froze and listened. The tapping stopped. I told myself it was just a branch brushing in the wind. Later that night, my phone screen lit up with a message. It was from an unknown number. The message said, "I see you." My heart jumped. I checked outside, but the street was empty. I tried to call the number back, but it was disconnected. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? Instead, I deleted the message and put my phone on silent. Over the next few days, the house seemed to change. The creaks grew louder. Doors that I was sure I had closed were open when I came back. Objects moved from where I left them. A small music box my mother had given me started playing by itself in the middle of the night. I felt watched. Not just by eyes, but by something colder, something not quite human. One night, I was sitting at the kitchen table when the lights flickered and went out. I reached for my phone to use its flashlight, but the screen was black. I thought maybe the battery died, but when I tried to charge it, the charger didn't work. The room was silent except for the slow drip of the faucet in the sink. I heard a faint whisper. It was so soft, I almost missed it. "Megan." I held my breath. The whisper came again, closer this time. "Megan." I stood up and walked toward the living room. The air felt heavy, like I was walking through water. Shadows moved at the edges of my vision, but whenever I turned to look, there was nothing there. I reached the living room window and saw a figure standing just outside. It was tall and dark, with no clear face, just a black shape that seemed to shift and move. I blinked, and it was gone. My phone suddenly lit up again. Another message from the unknown number. This time it was a photo. It was of me, sitting at the table, looking scared. But I had no idea who took the picture. I wanted to leave. I packed a bag and drove to my best friend Chris's house. I told him everything, the messages, the noises, the shadow. He didn't laugh or tell me to calm down. He believed me. Chris said, "This sounds like more than just a bad dream. Maybe there's something tied to the house. Have you checked if anything weird happened here before?" I hadn't. That night, we searched online and found old news stories about a woman who had lived in the house decades ago. She disappeared without a trace. Some people said she was cursed or that something dark followed her. We decided to go back and face whatever was there. That night, the wind howled, and rain hit the windows like tiny nails. The house felt alive, watching us. As we stepped inside, the lights flickered again, and the music box started playing softly. We walked through each room, looking for signs, and found strange symbols scratched into the wood near the basement door. As we opened it, a cold wave hit us. The air smelled of damp earth and something rotten. We didn't go down. Instead, we left the door open and stepped outside. That night, I felt the presence watching me, but not with anger, more like sadness. What do you think happened in that basement? Have you ever felt a presence that wasn't quite evil, but not friendly either? Sometimes, I wonder if that shadow was just looking for help, or if it wanted me to leave forever. The town of Pine Hollow was small and quiet, the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. It sat deep in the woods of northern Vermont, surrounded by thick trees that whispered in the cold wind. Autumn had just settled in, and the air was crisp, filled with the smell of damp leaves and wood smoke from chimneys. Jake Miller was a local police officer. He had lived in Pine Hollow his whole life. He knew the streets, the people, and the stories that floated around town like mist. But lately, Jake felt different. He was tired and restless. Ever since his wife passed away 6 months ago, a quiet sadness clung to him like a shadow. Sometimes he felt alone even when he wasn't. One chilly October evening, Jake was finishing his shift. The sky was a deep blue-gray, and the streetlights flickered weakly along Main Street. The old wooden buildings creaked as the wind pushed through. As he locked up the station, his phone buzzed with a message from his sister, Megan. She wanted to check in, worried about how he'd been. Jake typed back, but his fingers trembled slightly. He hated feeling so vulnerable. Just then, a call came in about strange noises at the old Harper farmhouse on the edge of town. No one had lived there for years. Kids whispered stories about lights flickering inside, doors slamming without wind. Jake felt a knot tighten in his chest but told himself it was probably just animals or vandals. He grabbed his jacket and drove through winding foggy roads toward the farmhouse. The headlights cut through the mist as he passed thick trees, their branches scratching the car roof like long fingers. The smell of wet earth filled the air. At the farmhouse, the porch light was flickering faintly. Jake stepped out, boots crunching on the gravel. The house looked tired, peeling paint, broken windows. The wind moaned softly through cracks in the wood. Inside, everything was cold and still. The air smelled musty, mixed with something faintly sweet like old perfume. Jake's breath made small clouds as he moved through the rooms, flashlight beam dancing on the walls. Suddenly, a soft tapping sound echoed from upstairs. He climbed the narrow stairs, heart pounding. The tapping grew louder, like fingernails rapping on a wooden floor. At the top, the hallway was empty. The old floorboards creaked under his feet. Then, from the end of the hallway, a shadow slipped behind a door. Jake froze. His phone buzzed in his pocket, a message from Megan, "Call me when you get home." He answered, voice shaking a little. She spoke gently, reminding him he wasn't alone. Suddenly, the shadow moved again, this time across the wall like a dark figure drifting by. Jake's flashlight flickered, then went out. He fumbled for the phone's light, hands trembling. The tapping stopped. Silence filled the house, thick and heavy. Jake felt eyes watching him. He backed toward the stairs. Then, a cold gust slammed the front door shut downstairs. His phone screen flickered with a new message. But it wasn't from Megan. It read, "Why are you here, Jake?" He stared, heart racing. A whisper brushed his ear like a breath of cold air, "Leave now." Jake didn't hesitate. He ran down the stairs, threw open the door, and jumped into his car. As he drove away, the fog swallowed the house again, hiding its secrets. Later that night, Jake sat alone, the old farmhouse and its shadow lingering in his mind. He wondered what he had really seen. Was it a restless spirit? Or just his grief playing tricks? He kept his phone close, waiting for another message, another sign. What do you think happened in that old house? Have you ever felt a presence that made the hairs on your neck stand up? Sometimes, the quietest places hold the darkest secrets. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. The small town of Willow Creek was quiet that late October night. The cold wind blew through the empty streets, carrying the scent of fallen leaves and wood smoke. Streetlights flickered softly, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks. It was the kind of night that made you pull your jacket tighter, even when you were inside. Jake Turner was a local sheriff, a man who had lived in Willow Creek all his life. He knew the town like the back of his hand, but lately, things had felt different. Jake was tired. His wife had passed a year ago, and since then, the loneliness settled deep inside him. His job gave him purpose, but some nights, the silence at home was heavy. On this night, Jake was driving his patrol car along the old hollow road. The trees on either side were tall and thick, their branches scratching against the windshield like fingers. It was the kind of road parents warned their kids about, especially when the fog rolled in after a rain, making everything look ghostly and unclear. Jake's phone buzzed on the dashboard. He glanced down. A message from his daughter, Emily, "Dad, I'm home safe. Love you." He smiled softly but felt the ache of missing her company. Suddenly, the radio crackled. "Dispatch, do you copy? We got a call from the old mill house." The voice was tense, and Jake's heart skipped a beat. The mill house was an abandoned farmhouse on the edge of town. No one had lived there for decades. Locals whispered stories, strange lights, shadowy figures, noises that made you freeze. Jake turned the car toward the mill house, headlights cutting through the thick fog. The air smelled damp and cold. As he got closer, his breath fogged in the chilly night. He parked beside the rusted gate. The mill house stood silent, its wooden boards weathered and cracked. The windows were dark, except for a faint flicker of light inside, like a candle. Jake grabbed his flashlight and stepped out. The crunch of leaves under his boots was loud in the stillness. He moved toward the porch, the wood groaning under his weight. Inside, the air was stale. Dust hung in the beams of his flashlight. But something felt off. His skin prickled. Suddenly, the phone in his pocket buzzed again. He pulled it out. The screen showed a message from an unknown number, "Leave now. They are watching." Jake's heart raced. Who sent that? He looked around. The silence was thick, broken only by the faint creak of the house settling. Then he heard it, a soft whisper, like a breath against his ear. He spun around. Nothing. He told himself it was the wind. He kept moving through the dark rooms, shining the light on broken furniture and peeling wallpaper. In the corner, something moved. A shadow darted across the wall. Jake froze. "Hello?" His voice was steady but low. No answer. His flashlight flickered, then died. Darkness swallowed him. Jake fumbled with the phone's light, but the screen went black too. He was alone in the dark, with only the sounds of his own breath and the distant tapping of something, wood on wood. The tapping grew louder, faster. It sounded like footsteps, but uneven, like something not quite walking right. Jake's mind raced. Was it an animal? Or something else? He backed toward the door, hands shaking. Then, a soft glow appeared at the far end of the hallway, a pale blue light, flickering like a flame but colder, stranger. He swallowed hard and moved toward it, every step heavy. The light led him to the attic stairs. He hesitated, then climbed. At the top, the air was icy. The light came from a small, cracked music box on the floor. It played a slow, haunting tune. Jake picked it up. As the music played, a voice whispered behind him. "Why are you here?" He spun around, but the attic was empty. The music box stopped. Jake felt a cold breath on his neck. He didn't wait to find out more. He dashed down the stairs, out the door, and back to his car. As he drove away, the fog swallowed the mill house once again. Back at home, Jake sat in silence, the music box resting on his desk. He wondered who or what had sent the warning. Was it a restless spirit? A neighbor playing a cruel joke? Or something darker watching from the shadows? He didn't know. What do you think Jake will do next? Have you ever felt that chill of not knowing what's really out there when the lights go out? The woods around Willow Creek hold many secrets. Maybe some are better left alone. Jake had lived in the small town of Pine Lake all his life. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names. The streets were lined with old wooden houses, some creaky and weathered, others freshly painted but still holding stories from long ago. Maple Street was his neighborhood, quiet and calm, except for the chill that came with October nights. Jake wasn't always a brave man. Since his wife, Megan, had passed away last winter, he felt the weight of loneliness pressing down on him every day. The house they shared was too big now, too empty. At night, Jake would sit on the porch, wrapped in his coat, watching the flickering streetlight across the road. The wind carried the scent of fallen leaves and damp earth, mixing with the faint smoke from chimneys nearby. Lately, something felt off. It started one cold evening just after Halloween. Jake noticed the streetlight on Maple Street had started to flicker more than usual. Not just a quick blink, it would pulse slowly, like a heartbeat, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalk. At first, he thought it was just the bulb going bad. But then he began to see shapes moving in the darkness beyond the light's reach. One night, as Jake was locking his door, he caught a glimpse of a figure standing across the street, near the old Thompson farmhouse. The house had been abandoned for years, and local kids whispered stories about it, ghostly screams, flickering candles in the windows, footsteps on the porch that no one could explain. Jake rubbed his eyes. The figure was tall, dressed in dark clothes, and seemed to watch him silently. When Jake blinked, the figure vanished. He told himself it was just his imagination, the stress of grief playing tricks. But when he looked out his bedroom window later that night, he saw the same figure again, standing under the flickering streetlight. This time, it moved closer, gliding, not walking, and the light seemed to dim as it approached. Jake's phone buzzed suddenly. He grabbed it, thankful for the distraction. It was a message from an unknown number. "You shouldn't be alone tonight." His heart skipped a beat. He called Megan's number, but it went straight to voicemail. The chill in the room grew heavier, and the shadows seemed to creep closer to the window. He locked the door and sat on the floor, holding his phone tight. The next day, Jake talked to his friend Chris, the town's police officer. Chris listened carefully as Jake told him about the flickering light, the strange figure, and the eerie text message. "Maybe it's some kind of prank," Chris said. "You know how kids get around here. Halloween's just passed, they like to scare folks." But Jake wasn't so sure. The feeling in his chest told him this was different. The darkness outside felt alive, watching. That night, Jake decided to set up an old security camera he found in the garage. It was an old model, with a grainy lens and a weak infrared light. He pointed it at the streetlight, hoping to catch something on video. As he settled into bed, the wind howled outside, rattling the window panes. The streetlight flickered again, slow and steady like a pulse. Jake could feel his breath coming faster, his mind swirling with memories and fears. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. Another message, "I see you." Jake stared into the dark room, eyes wide. The shadows by the door seemed to stretch, reaching toward him. He grabbed a flashlight and shone it toward the hallway. Nothing. Just the old coat hanging on the rack. The next morning, Jake checked the camera footage. The video was mostly static and dark, but at one point, the flickering light blinked rapidly. In that brief moment, a shadow passed through the frame, a tall figure, blurred and moving fast. Jake showed the footage to Chris, who frowned. "This isn't normal. Maybe we need to check out that old farmhouse." The two men walked toward the Thompson house that afternoon. The sun was low, casting long orange streaks through the fog. The air smelled like wet leaves and wood smoke. As they approached, Jake noticed the porch steps were broken, and the front door hung open just a crack. Inside, the air was cold and still, heavy with dust. Chris called out, "Hello? Anyone here?" No answer. But then, faint whispers seemed to echo down the hallway. Jake's skin prickled. Suddenly, a gust of cold wind slammed the door shut behind them. They both jumped. The flashlight beams scanned the walls, where old faded pictures hung crooked. One photo caught Jake's eye, a family standing on the porch, smiling. But the faces looked strange, as if they were watching him. "Let's get out of here," Jake whispered. Back outside, the streetlight began to flicker again. The tall shadow appeared beneath it, motionless. Jake realized something. The figure wasn't just watching, it was waiting. That night, Jake stayed awake, listening to the wind and the flickering light outside. He wondered if the ghostly figure was tied to the house or the streetlight itself. Was it a lost soul trapped between worlds? Or something darker? He thought about Megan and how grief had opened his world to things he never believed in. Before sleep took him, Jake typed a message on his phone, "If you're out there, please leave me be." The light blinked one last time before going dark. What do you think happened to Jake that night? Have you ever felt a presence watching you in the quiet of your own home? Sometimes, the things we don't see hold the deepest fears. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. It was late October in the small town of Maplewood, nestled deep in the woods of northern Vermont. The cold wind rustled through the bare branches, and fog clung low to the ground like a soft, white blanket. Streetlights flickered weakly along the empty roads, their glow barely pushing back the dark. Jake, a local deputy sheriff, was finishing his last patrol of the night. He had been feeling restless lately. Since the sudden loss of his wife a few months ago, the loneliness at home had settled like a shadow over him. His daughter lived with her mother now, and Jake's quiet house felt empty, too quiet. As he drove past the old Holloway farmhouse on the edge of town, something caught his eye. The windows, long boarded up, were glowing faintly with a pale blue light. Jake blinked, thinking maybe it was just a trick of the fog in the street lamp. But the light didn't go away. He decided to stop and take a closer look. The house was silent except for the creak of loose boards shifting in the wind. The smell of damp wood and decay was strong. Jake pulled out his flashlight and shone it on the front door. It was cracked open, just a little, like someone had slipped inside recently. His heart pounded. He thought about calling for backup but decided he could handle this. After all, it was just an abandoned house, right? He stepped inside. The air was cold and heavy, filled with dust and something else, a faint scent like burnt hair. His flashlight beam caught old furniture covered in sheets, spider webs stretched across corners. Then, in the corner of the room, he saw it. A small wooden music box, open and playing by itself. Jake froze. The melody was slow and haunting, like a lullaby sung long ago. The box was dusty but still wound tightly. How was it playing? Suddenly, the house felt alive. Shadows danced just beyond the light. The floorboards groaned under invisible footsteps. Jake could hear soft whispers, but when he turned, no one was there. His phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out, a text from an unknown number. The message read, "Don't look behind you." Jake swallowed hard, telling himself it was a prank. He turned back to the music box, but it had stopped. The room fell silent. He moved deeper into the house, his flashlight trembling slightly. Upstairs, the hallway stretched long and dark. Doors stood closed, but one at the end was wide open. He took a step toward it. The air grew colder. He felt a presence, watching him. Then the door slammed shut. Jake spun around, flashlight beam shaking wildly. The whispers rose into soft laughter, echoing through the empty house. He fumbled for his phone again. Another text, "You're not alone." Panic rose in his chest. He bolted downstairs and out the front door, breathing hard in the cold night air. The blue light vanished. The house was dark once more. Jake drove home, but his phone buzzed again. A photo message, it showed him, standing inside the house. Taken from behind. No one else was visible. He looked up at the rearview mirror. For a brief moment, he thought he saw a dark figure sitting in the back seat. When he blinked, it was gone. That night, Jake lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Was it just grief making him see things? Or was something truly haunting the Holloway farmhouse? Have you ever felt like something was watching you when you were alone? What do you think Jake will do next? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. The night was cold and quiet in the small town of Willow Creek. The wind whispered softly through the bare branches of the old oak trees. Streetlights flickered gently, casting long shadows down the empty roads. It was late October, and the air smelled faintly of damp earth and fallen leaves. Jake Turner had lived in Willow Creek all his life. He was a quiet man, a local police officer who liked the peace of his town. But lately, Jake felt restless. His wife had passed away 6 months ago, and the silence in his house felt heavier every day. The loneliness was a weight he carried with him everywhere. One evening, Jake was on patrol near the edge of town. The road there was narrow and lined with tall pines. An old farmhouse stood alone, its windows dark and broken. People said it was haunted, but Jake didn't believe in ghosts. Still, he always felt uneasy passing by it. That night, as Jake drove slowly past the house, his radio crackled with static. The screen on his dashboard flickered, and then went black for a moment. He sighed, tapping the radio to clear the interference. When the screen lit back up, a message appeared, "Help me." Jake frowned. The words seemed out of place, like a prank. But his heart quickened. He looked around. The road was empty. No cars, no people. Only the sound of the wind moving through the trees. He decided to check the farmhouse. Maybe someone was inside, hurt or trapped. Jake grabbed his flashlight and stepped out into the chilly night air. The wind bit at his face, and the dry leaves crunched under his boots. As he approached the old porch, the wood creaked beneath his steps. The house smelled musty, like forgotten memories and old dust. Jake's flashlight beam danced over peeling wallpaper and broken furniture scattered inside. Suddenly, the screen on his radio flickered again. This time, it showed a shadowy figure standing in the corner of the room. Jake spun around, but the room was empty. His breath grew shallow. Was it his mind playing tricks? He tried to shake the feeling of being watched. Then, he heard it, a soft tapping sound, like fingers drumming on wood. The noise came from upstairs. Jake's flashlight shook as he climbed the creaking stairs, each step louder in the silence. At the top, the tapping stopped. The hallway was dark except for the glow of his flashlight. A cold breeze brushed past him, sending a chill down his spine. Jake reached the last door on the right. He pushed it open slowly. Inside was a small room with faded wallpaper and a cracked mirror hanging on the wall. The tapping began again, this time from behind the mirror. He stepped closer, heart pounding. His hand trembled as he touched the edge of the mirror. Suddenly, it slid aside like a door, revealing a narrow hidden space. Inside, he found an old music box. It was dusty and covered in cobwebs. Jake wound it up, and a soft, eerie melody began to play. The air grew heavier, the shadows darker. He felt a presence behind him. Turning quickly, Jake saw the shadowy figure from the radio, this time clearer. It was a young woman with hollow eyes and a sad smile. She whispered, "Find me." Jake blinked. When he looked again, she was gone. The music stopped. The house grew still. Jake hurried back down the stairs, the weight of the night pressing on him. Outside, the wind had died, leaving a strange silence. As he got into his patrol car, the radio crackled one last time. The screen showed the message, "Thank you." Jake stared at it, questions swirling in his mind. Had it been real? A ghost? Or something else? What do you think happened in that old farmhouse? Have you ever felt a presence you couldn't explain? Sometimes, in quiet towns like Willow Creek, the past isn't as far behind as we believe. On a chilly October evening, Megan sat by the window of her small house in Pine Lake, a quiet town tucked away between rolling hills and dense forests. The cold wind pushed against the old wooden frame of the house, making it creak softly. Leaves rustled in the street outside, carried by the faint light of flickering street lamps. It was Halloween week, but instead of joy, Megan felt a deep loneliness pressing on her chest. Just a few months ago, she had lost her husband, Chris. The grief was heavy and raw, making the days stretch long and empty. She kept her phone close, scrolling through old pictures and messages, trying to hold on to memories. But social media only made her feel more alone, watching others share happy moments while she sat in silence. Tonight, Megan wanted to feel a little peace. She brewed some tea and wrapped herself in a warm blanket. Outside, the fog began to settle over the streets, blurring the shapes of houses and trees. The smell of damp earth mixed with the faint scent of burning wood from nearby chimneys. As Megan sipped her tea, her phone buzzed. A message popped up from an unknown number. "I see you." She frowned, heart skipping a beat. It had to be a prank. But then the power flickered, and the screen went dark. The room fell silent except for the soft hum of the heater. Megan's breath grew shallow. She reached for a flashlight and shone it around. The beam landed on the old painting above the fireplace, a family portrait, faded and cracked. Suddenly, the eyes in the painting seemed to shift, watching her. She blinked hard. It was probably just her imagination. But the feeling of being watched lingered. Megan decided to check the front door. The cold air rushed in as she opened it. The fog was thick, curling around the streetlights like ghostly fingers. She looked down the empty road, nothing but shadows and the distant call of a lone owl. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a photo appeared, a blurry image of her living room, taken from somewhere near the window. Megan's heart pounded. How was this possible? Suddenly, a soft tapping came from the window. She froze. The tapping continued, slow and steady. Megan turned her flashlight toward the sound. The glass was cold and wet with dew, but no one was outside. Her thoughts raced. Was someone watching her? Or was this some kind of trick by her own mind, worn down by loneliness and fear? Megan stepped back and locked the door. She sat down, clutching her tea, trying to calm her racing heart. The phone buzzed one last time with a message, "Don't look behind you." Her breath caught. Slowly, she turned. The room was empty. But in the dim light, a shadow moved just beyond the hallway. A dark figure with no face, standing still. Megan's voice was barely a whisper. "Who's there?" No answer. She reached for the phone to call someone, but the screen was blank. Then, the heater clicked off, plunging the room into cold darkness. Megan sat frozen, the silence pressing in. Was it real? A ghost? Or just her grief taking shape? What do you think happened that night in Pine Lake? Have you ever felt a presence in the quiet when no one else was around? I live in a small town called Maplewood. It's quiet, with only a few hundred people. Most houses are old and wooden. Some creak when the wind blows. The streetlights flicker sometimes, especially in the fall. Last October, just before Halloween, I moved into a little old house on Elm Street. The house had been empty for almost a year. I didn't mind. I wanted a fresh start. I had just left my job at the city police and wanted peace after some rough months. I'd been feeling alone and tired. The first night was cold. The wind blew softly through the trees. The floorboards groaned now and then. I could smell damp wood and leaves outside. It was calm but strange. I set up my phone and laptop on the kitchen table. I wanted to catch up on messages and watch some shows. But the internet was slow. Worse, my phone kept acting weird. The screen would flicker or go black for seconds. Sometimes, it showed a face, but when I looked closely, no one was there. I thought it was just a glitch. One evening, I got a message on social media. It was from an unknown person. The message said only, "I see you." I didn't reply. I thought it was a prank. But the messages kept coming, always short and strange. "Look outside, they're watching, don't trust the lights." The street lights outside my window started flickering more than usual. One night, I noticed shadows moving just beyond the glass. I felt cold and uneasy. I tried to tell myself it was just my mind playing tricks. Then, the sounds began. Soft tapping on the walls, like fingernails. Sometimes, I heard whispering but couldn't understand the words. My heart would beat faster. I kept thinking about the stories my grandmother told me when I was a kid about the Hat Man, a shadow figure that visits lonely people. One night, I left my phone charging on the kitchen counter and went to bed. Just as I was drifting off, the phone lit up with a message, "You can't hide." The screen flickered again, showing a dark shape behind me. I turned quickly. Nothing was there. I tried to ignore it. But the next day, I found scratches on my bedroom door. They looked fresh. I locked the door, but the noises got louder. The tapping became pounding. I reached out to my friend Megan. She came over and said the house fell off. She suggested I put a small camera in the living room to see what was going on. I set up the camera and checked the footage the next morning. For hours, nothing happened. Then, at midnight, a dark shape appeared near the window. It didn't move much but seemed to watch. My breath caught. I was scared but also curious. Was it real? Was I losing my mind? The messages on my phone changed tone. Now they were pleading, "Help me, get out, they want you." One night, the power went out. The whole neighborhood was dark except for my porch light, which flickered wildly. The tapping on the walls became banging. I sat still in the dark, clutching my phone. Suddenly, a soft voice whispered in my ear, "Why don't you come outside?" I froze. I didn't want to look, but I slowly turned my head. No one was there. The cold wind brushed my cheek like a hand. I stood up and walked to the door. The porch light went out, leaving me in total darkness. I didn't go outside. The next morning, I found muddy footprints leading from my porch into the woods behind my house. They stopped at the edge of the trees. I've been thinking a lot about what happened. Was it a ghost? A shadow? Or just my fears made real? I still live here. I still get the messages sometimes. The phone glitches. The shadows move. What do you think is watching me? Have you ever felt eyes on you when no one was there? Sometimes, I wonder if this town holds secrets, hidden just beyond the foggy roads and flickering lights. Maybe some places are not as quiet as they seem. It was late October in the quiet town of Maplewood. The cold wind whispered through the bare branches, and the streetlights flickered faintly as fog rolled in from the nearby woods. The old wooden houses creaked under the weight of the chilly night. Megan had just moved back home after a tough year. She was still feeling lost after her divorce, and the silence of the town made her feel both comforted and lonely. Her phone was her lifeline, but lately, it had been acting strange, lights blinking, strange noises, and messages she never sent. One night, Megan sat alone in her living room. The soft glow of her laptop lit her face. She tried scrolling through social media, hoping for a distraction, but her screen suddenly flickered. A cold draft passed through the room, making her shiver. Then, a faint tapping sound came from the old attic window. She froze, listening. The sound stopped. Megan told herself it was just the wind. But over the next few nights, the tapping returned. Sometimes it was soft, almost like someone was knocking, other times louder. Megan's anxiety grew. She wanted to tell her friends, but she felt too ashamed to admit how scared she was. One evening, she decided to check the attic. The stairs creaked as she climbed, each step echoing in the quiet house. The smell of dust and old wood filled her nose. When she reached the attic door, it was slightly open. Megan pushed it wide and looked inside. The room was dark except for a pale light coming from her old music box, sitting on a dusty table. The box had belonged to her grandmother, and she had not touched it since moving back. The music box was playing. Megan stepped closer, heart pounding. She reached out to close it, but the lid snapped shut on its own. Suddenly, the room grew colder. A shadow moved across the wall. Megan's breath caught. She heard a whisper, soft and distant, "Help me." Megan spun around, but no one was there. The tapping started again, louder now, from the attic window. She ran down the stairs and locked the door behind her. For days after, strange things happened. Her phone would ring with no one on the line. Lights flickered, and sometimes she saw a dark figure standing just outside her window. One night, Megan's friend Chris came over. He was a local officer and had heard stories about the old Maplewood house where Megan lived. People said it was haunted by someone who had died there long ago. Chris and Megan sat quietly, talking about the strange events. They both wondered if the house's history was somehow reaching out. That night, Megan dreamed she was back in the attic. The music box played, and the shadow whispered again. She woke up with tears on her cheeks. Megan knew she couldn't stay silent. She began researching the house's past. She found out that years ago, a young woman had lived there. She had vanished without a trace one autumn night, right before Halloween. Megan felt a chill. Could this be the same presence in her home? A lost soul reaching out? She decided to leave a small candle in the attic window, hoping it might bring some peace. The tapping stopped. But sometimes, late at night, Megan still hears the faint sound of music playing. What do you think the shadow wants? Have you ever felt a presence in your home, watching and waiting? The quiet town of Maplewood was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's name. Nestled between thick forests and rolling hills, it had the charm of old America with its creaky wooden houses and flickering streetlights that seemed to dance with the wind. Autumn was settling in, painting the trees in deep oranges and reds, and the chill in the air was sharp enough to make you pull your jacket tighter. Megan lived alone in one of those old houses on Elm Street. She was a schoolteacher, known for her warm smile and gentle voice, but lately, Megan felt a quiet sadness weighing on her heart. Her husband had passed away the previous winter, and since then, she'd been battling loneliness and the creeping anxiety that often comes with loss. The nights were the hardest. One evening, Megan sat by her small fireplace, wrapped in a soft blanket, scrolling through her phone. She kept checking messages and social media, hoping to feel a connection, but the glow from the screen seemed colder than the room. Suddenly, the phone flickered and went black. She tapped it, but it stayed dead. A strange chill ran down her spine. The house felt unusually silent, except for the faint creak of the wooden floorboards. Megan listened carefully. Then she heard it, a soft whisper, almost like a sigh, coming from upstairs. She shook her head. "It's just the house settling," she told herself. The next few nights were worse. The power would flicker on and off. Lights buzzed and dimmed, and sometimes the TV would turn on by itself, showing static with a faint shadow moving behind the screen. Megan's dog, Buddy, growled at empty corners and refused to enter the attic. One night, as rain tapped gently against the windows and the wind whispered through the trees, Megan lay awake. The house seemed alive with sounds, soft footsteps, faint knocks, and an eerie, distant humming she couldn't place. She reached for her phone, but it was dead again. No signal. She felt trapped in silence and shadows. Curious but scared, Megan decided to check the attic. She climbed the narrow stairs slowly, each step creaking under her weight. At the top, the door was slightly open. She pushed it wider, revealing old boxes and forgotten memories. The air smelled musty, mixed with something faintly sweet and metallic. As she moved deeper inside, a cold breeze brushed past her. She heard a whisper, clear this time, calling her name. Her heart pounded. Suddenly, the attic light flickered on by itself, revealing a dark figure standing in the corner. It had no face, just shadows shifting where eyes should be. Megan froze. The figure didn't move but seemed to watch her. She felt a wave of sorrow, like the figure was trapped in sadness too. Then, slowly, it faded away, leaving the attic cold and quiet. Shaken, Megan hurried downstairs. She sat by the fire, trying to steady her breathing. Was it grief playing tricks on her? Or something more? In the days that followed, the strange events continued: unexplained whispers, flickering lights, and that eerie humming. Megan started writing about her experiences, hoping to make sense of it all. She shared her story online, wondering if others had faced similar things. One comment caught her eye: sometimes, the past reaches out when we're most lonely. Have you ever felt that someone, or something, is trying to connect? What do you think it wants? Megan wasn't sure. Was the shadow a lost soul, or a part of her own grief manifesting? She didn't have answers, but she felt less alone knowing others listened. Some nights, when the wind howls and the lights flicker, Megan still hears the soft humming. She wonders, is it a message? A warning? Or just the house speaking in whispers? Have you ever felt something in the quiet moments, something that can't be explained? What would you do if the shadows called your name? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. It was late October, and the cold wind was starting to bite through the old trees lining the quiet streets of Millfield, a small town nestled between endless forests and worn-out farms. The air smelled like damp leaves and wood smoke. Streetlights flickered weakly, casting long shadows on the cracked sidewalks. Megan had lived in Millfield her whole life. She was 32, quiet, and had just lost her mother a few months earlier. Since then, the house they shared felt emptier than ever. She worked part-time at the local library, but most days she stayed home, scrolling through her phone, feeling the weight of loneliness and worry pressing down on her. Her best friend Jake was a police officer. He often told her to get out more, but Megan felt stuck. The nights were the hardest. Sometimes, when the fog rolled in thick, the silence outside her window felt heavy, like something unseen was watching. One chilly evening, Megan sat alone in her creaky old house on Willow Lane. The wind rattled the wooden shutters, and the floorboards groaned under the house settling. She tried to distract herself by watching videos on her laptop, but the screen kept flickering oddly. At first, she blamed the power or her old computer, but then she noticed strange images blinking in and out, a shadow moving just at the edge of the frame, a faint whisper behind the sound. She felt a chill run down her spine. That night, as she lay in bed, the house grew silent except for the soft tapping of rain against the window. Just as she was drifting off, a sudden loud knock echoed from the front door. Megan's heart jumped. She told herself it was just the wind, but when she looked toward the door, she saw the hallway light flicker and go out. Her phone buzzed with a message. It was from an unknown number. The text read, "I'm still here." Megan froze. She had never gotten a message like that before. She called Jake immediately. "Jake, something's wrong. I think something's in the house." Jake tried to calm her down, saying it was probably a prank or some glitch. But Megan wasn't convinced. The next few nights grew worse. Doors creaked open and slammed shut when no one was around. Her phone would ring with no one on the line. At times, she thought she saw dark shapes move just outside her window. One evening, she found an old music box in the attic, dust-covered and forgotten. It played a haunting melody when wound up, but sometimes it seemed to play by itself. Megan would hear it softly in the house late at night. She started recording the strange sounds with her phone. One clip had her whispering into the dark, asking if anyone was there. The playback revealed a faint, breathy voice answering, "Leave." Megan felt trapped between fear and disbelief. Was this real? Or just her mind playing tricks because of all the grief and stress? Jake came over one night to check the house. He didn't believe in ghosts, but even he felt uneasy. As he moved through the living room, the lights flickered, and a cold breeze passed by. His radio, which he always carried, suddenly crackled with static, then a low voice whispered, "Watch." Neither of them slept well that night. Days later, Megan found an old newspaper clipping about a woman who once lived in the house. The story said the woman vanished without a trace in the 1920s. Some people in Millfield said her spirit never left. Megan wondered if the restless presence was tied to that mystery. She felt a strange connection, like the sadness and loss in the house had followed her here. One night, as Megan sat by the window, staring out into the fog, she saw a dark figure standing at the edge of the woods behind her house. It didn't move but just watched. She blinked, and it was gone. She whispered to herself, "What do you want from me?" She never got an answer. The house stayed cold, and the strange happenings continued. But Megan learned to live with the feeling of being watched, the whispers, and the flickering lights. She sometimes wondered if it was a warning or a plea. Have you ever felt something watching you when you were alone? Or heard a voice when no one was there? What do you think Megan should do next? Would you stay in that house, or would you leave? The night is quiet now, but maybe, just maybe, the shadows are still waiting. The small town of Maplewood was quiet on most nights. Cold winds whispered through the empty streets, making the old wooden houses creak like they had secrets to tell. It was late October, just before Halloween, and the fog hung low over the roads, softening the glow of the flickering streetlights. Leaves rustled and skittered in little whirlwinds, carrying the scent of damp earth and fallen pine needles. Jake was a young man who had recently moved back to Maplewood. Life hadn't been kind to him lately. He was still trying to cope with the loss of his mother a few months before. Grief weighed on him like a heavy coat he couldn't take off. He lived alone in his grandmother's old farmhouse on the edge of town. The house was quiet, sometimes too quiet. Jake wasn't much for technology, but he kept an old smartphone for emergencies. It was his link to the world, but lately, even that felt strange. Sometimes the screen would flicker on by itself, showing nothing but static or strange, brief images that disappeared too fast to understand. He thought maybe it was just a glitch, but deep down, he felt something more. It made him anxious. One night, after a long day at the local diner where he worked, Jake sat on the porch, wrapped in a thick blanket. The wind was colder now, biting at his skin. The wooden floorboards creaked softly as he shifted his weight. He looked out toward the dark woods behind the house. The trees stood still, like silent watchers in the night. Suddenly, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out and saw a message from an unknown number. "I see you." Jake's heart skipped a beat. He looked around but saw no one. Maybe a prank, he told himself. But the message felt wrong, like something crawling under his skin. Trying to shake off the feeling, Jake put the phone down and stared into the fog. That's when he noticed a shadow near the edge of the woods. It was tall and thin, almost human-shaped but too dark and still. The kind of shape that doesn't belong anywhere but your nightmares. He blinked, and the shadow was gone. He told himself it was just his mind playing tricks. The loss, the loneliness, it was all getting to him. But as the nights went on, the strange messages kept coming. Sometimes just words. Sometimes pictures. One night, a photo of his own porch, taken from the woods. One evening, Jake decided to confront the fear. He grabbed a flashlight and headed toward the woods. The cold bit harder, and the leaves crunched under his boots. The fog wrapped around him like a thick blanket. He moved slowly, ears straining for any sound. Only the wind answered. Suddenly, a cold breeze brushed past him, carrying a faint whisper. Jake froze. "Why are you here?" the voice seemed to ask. He spun around but saw nothing. His flashlight flickered, then died. The woods were pitch black. Jake's heart pounded. He fumbled with the flashlight until it flickered back on. In the beam, he saw it, the tall shadow, standing just beyond the trees. It didn't move, but its presence was heavy and cold. Jake felt a wave of sadness wash over him, deeper than his own grief. He wanted to run, but his feet felt rooted to the ground. Then the shadow lifted a hand, pointing toward his phone, still in his pocket. The phone buzzed again. Jake pulled it out and saw a new message, "Remember me." Suddenly, memories flooded back, his mother's stories about the old woman who had lived in these woods decades ago. A woman said to protect the town but who was wronged and lost, her spirit trapped between worlds. People whispered about seeing her shadow, warning signs, or feeling watched. Jake realized the shadow wasn't there to hurt him but to reach out. To remind him of something lost. He stood silent for a long moment. Then the shadow slowly faded into the fog. Back on his porch, Jake stared at the phone. The messages stopped. The cold feeling left. Was it really a spirit? Or just his mind trying to heal? Jake didn't know. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, he thought he heard a soft voice in the night, saying, "You're not alone." What do you think Jake's encounter meant? Have you ever felt watched or sensed something unseen? Maybe the past isn't gone, maybe it's still reaching out. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. I was around 8 years old when this happened. My parents had me later in life, so my older siblings were way ahead of me. My brother Tyler was already driving at the time, and my sister had moved out. I was the baby of the family by a good 10 years. It was sometime in the winter, cold enough that the windows would fog up at night and the radiators creak like old bones. I lived with my family in a quiet suburb outside of Asheville, North Carolina. Our house was one of those 70s two-stories with creaky floorboards and wood paneling in the hallway. That night, I woke up to some kind of noise downstairs. It wasn't loud, but it was frantic. Voices. My parents. I cracked my bedroom door open and peeked out. They were talking fast and low, like something was wrong. I called down from the top of the stairs. My mom looked up and told me, a little too quickly, "Go back to bed, honey." I didn't argue. I could tell something was off. I slipped back under the covers, heart beating a little faster, and tried to settle in. Then I heard the front door slam. And silence. I figured they had gone somewhere, maybe to check on my brother, or something. I didn't really understand. But I stayed in bed like I was told. Eventually, I started hearing noises again. The front door creaked open, then closed. Footsteps followed it, slow, steady steps across the wooden floors downstairs. Drawers opened and shut. Cabinets creaked. The fridge made that suction sound when it was pulled open. I figured it had to be Tyler. He often came home late from his shifts or hanging out with friends. Him making a mess in the kitchen at 2 a.m. wasn't weird. I kept telling myself that. Made sense. Then came the footsteps on the stairs. One step. Then another. Slow. Steady. Coming closer. They reached the top landing. I didn't sit up, I just lay there, eyes open, staring toward the door in the dark. It creaked open, just a little. I could see the outline of someone standing there. No lights on. Just this tall, unmoving silhouette in the doorway, head-shaped, but not clearly defined. I whispered, "Tyler?" No answer. "Mom? Dad?" Still nothing. Then I just asked, "Who's there?" The figure didn't respond. It stood there a few seconds longer before slowly closing the door. I heard the footsteps retreating down the stairs. I convinced myself it was my dad. Maybe checking on me and just not wanting to wake me up. But even then, something about the silence was wrong. I stayed in bed for a few minutes, but my curiosity got the better of me. I tiptoed out of my room, careful not to step on the boards that squeaked. I didn't turn any lights on. I didn't want to get in trouble. I just wanted to see who was down there. I reached the doorway to the kitchen and froze. A tall figure stood in the middle of the kitchen. Not moving. Just standing there. I couldn't see much in the dark, but they were big, like my dad. So I asked, "Dad?" That's when the voice responded. But it didn't sound like my dad. It was deep. Too deep. Like it echoed from the walls instead of coming from a mouth. "Go back upstairs." I didn't hesitate. I turned and bolted back to my room, heart pounding in my ears. Slammed the door and dove under the covers like that would protect me. The voice didn't sound threatening exactly, but it wasn't right. It felt wrong. Like a recording played at the wrong speed. I stayed under the blankets, barely breathing. Then, maybe half an hour later, the front door opened again. More noise. This time it was definitely my parents. I peeked out again from the top of the stairs. They looked startled to see me up. "What happened?" I asked. My mom said that Tyler had been in a car accident. They got a call from the hospital and rushed to see him. They didn't want to wake me, so they left quietly. That's when I asked my dad if he had come into my room. He looked confused. "We've been gone since 11, he said. That's when it clicked. Whatever I'd seen, it wasn't them. My mom turned pale. She looked at my dad and said, "You didn't lock the door?" He didn't answer at first. Then he muttered something under his breath and grabbed the pistol from the drawer. Searched the whole house. Meanwhile, my mom called the police. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with a blanket wrapped around me, talking to the officer while my mom made hot cocoa with shaky hands. They asked for my story. I told them everything. They were polite, but I could tell they didn't really believe me. Nothing was missing from the house. No forced entry. But something or someone had been inside. That much I know. I think what rattled my parents most wasn't just that someone broke in. It was that I had a conversation with them. That night never made the news. There was no follow-up. But every time I walk past that kitchen now, even as an adult, I still hear that voice in the back of my head. "Go back upstairs." Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. When I was about 16, our family moved into a small rental house in Pine Hollow, Oregon. It was closer to my brother's elementary school and a lot more affordable than where we were before. It wasn't fancy, but it had charmed wood-paneled walls, a brick fireplace perfect for cold winters, and creaky floorboards that always seemed louder at night. My little brother, Eli, was around 7 at the time and obsessed with Batman. He had this toy Batmobile that lit up and made all sorts of dramatic sound effects. It was his prized possession. He played with it constantly. One afternoon, Eli came back inside after playing in the backyard and told us he had found something. My mom and I glanced at each other, curious. "What did you find, buddy?" she asked. Eli held out a small photo tag, the kind you'd get if your parents paid extra for your school portraits. It was old and scuffed, the edges frayed, and the laminate was cracked. You couldn't even see the school year anymore. Just a picture of a boy, maybe 7 or 8, with short hair and a toothy smile. "Probably just some neighbor kid's picture that blew over from the yard," Mom said. We were about to toss it when Eli said something that made us pause. "That's Buddy," he said plainly. I blinked at him. "Who?" He pointed again. "Buddy. He's my friend." It caught me off guard. Eli didn't make friends easily, especially not new ones. He was shy around other kids. I hadn't seen him talk to anyone since we moved. But he spoke about Buddy like they'd known each other forever. I figured maybe he'd met someone next door or across the street, though I hadn't seen any kids around. Still, I let it go. Kids have wild imaginations. That night, sometime around 3 a.m., I woke up to Eli's voice. Not crying. Not yelling. Just talking. Annoyed, I shuffled into his room to tell him to quiet down. But when I opened the door, I stopped cold. He was sitting upright in bed, blanket pulled at his waist, eyes fixed on the far corner of his room like he was in the middle of a serious conversation. Eli, I whispered. He didn't respond right away. Just stared into the dark. Go to sleep, man. It's late, I said, trying not to sound freaked out. He blinked slowly, then nodded. I left the room and went back to bed, brushing it off as kid stuff. A few days later, my mom asked if I'd noticed anything weird about Eli. Not really, I said. Why? He's been getting up at night, she said. Walking around. Talking to himself. I don't know. Just off. We both shrugged it off. Maybe he was just adjusting to the new house. In my room, my bed faced the hallway. If my door was open and I turned over, I could see straight across into Eli's room. One night, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. Since I've always been scared of the dark, I kept the hallway light on. It gave me just enough comfort to get back to sleep. As I lay in bed, trying to settle down again, I heard something that made me sit up. It was Eli's Batmobile toy. The engine noises, the lights, the whole thing going off like he was mid-play session. Frustrated, I got up to tell him to knock it off. But when I entered his room, he was sound asleep, arms curled up under his head, breathing slow and even. And the Batmobile? It was across the room on the floor, blinking and rumbling like it had just been touched. I walked over, turned it off, and left. Over the next few nights, things got stranger. Eli started bringing up Buddy more often, talking about him like he was a real person. Buddy likes peanut butter, he'd say, or Buddy doesn't like the basement. It started getting under my skin, so I went to check out the neighbors. The house on the left was empty. The one on the right belonged to an older couple with no kids or grandkids in sight. Still, my dad brushed it all off. He probably made him up, he said. Imaginary friends aren't a big deal. Except they kind of were. Almost every night, one of us, Mom, Dad, my sister Mia, or me, would hear the Batmobile go off. Even when no one had touched it. We'd have to get up, walk to Eli's room, and turn it off manually. I mentioned it to my sister one night, and she told me she'd had to do the same. Dad insisted the toy had motion sensors or something. But we checked the box when we bought it. There were no motion sensors. No timers. Just a button. Eventually, Mia got so creeped out, she started sleeping in my room. And honestly, I was glad for the company. One night, we were up talking, trying to convince ourselves it was all just in our heads, when we heard it again, the unmistakable sounds of the Batmobile revving and beeping. We both froze. My door was open, and we could see directly into Eli's room. The lights from the toy flickered down the hall. Then, slowly, it rolled past the doorway on its own. We screamed and bolted to our parents' room. They were furious, thinking Eli was pulling some kind of prank. But what he said chilled me to the bone. It wasn't me, he mumbled, rubbing his eyes. Buddy wanted to play. That night, the toy went in the trash. Batteries removed. Case closed. Or so we thought. The next morning, Eli had it again. Where did you get that? My dad asked. Buddy gave it back to me, Eli said, clutching the toy like nothing was wrong. Dad ripped it from his hands, snapped it into pieces, and threw it out again, this time for good. Eli was upset, but we bought him a different Batman toy, and things seemed to go back to normal. For a while. About a week later, it finally felt like Buddy was gone. The house felt lighter, calmer. Then one afternoon, while Mom was cooking dinner on the countertop George Foreman grill, she walked into the living room to ask us something. And that's when we all heard the crash. We ran to the kitchen. The grill had been thrown across the room. Not tipped over. Not fallen from the edge. It was lying on the floor halfway across the kitchen. I swear it was in the middle of the counter, Mom whispered. None of us could explain it. Nothing else happened after that. We stayed in that house for another year before moving out. And we never spoke of Buddy again. But sometimes, late at night, I think about that picture. About the toy. About the crash. And I still wonder, what if Buddy wasn't imaginary? When I was just 10, my family moved to a small town in upstate New York, Maple Falls. It was quiet, wooded, and felt like something out of a Halloween postcard. I was starting 5th grade at a new elementary school, which is never easy. I didn't know a soul, and the kids already had their cliques. At lunchtime, we were assigned to tables based on homerooms, and I remember just sitting there, feeling invisible. Kids at that age are brutal. I was the outsider, no history, no inside jokes, just some random kid who showed up one day. But those lonely first days, I actually met a couple of kids from the neighborhood. One of them was Danny. He didn't go to my school, he was in some private academy nearby, but we met when I was riding my bike and he flagged me down, asking if I'd just moved into the yellow house on Maple Street. We hit it off and started hanging out after school. A few days later, another kid came into the picture. His name was Alex. Alex showed up at our door one afternoon. My parents called me to the entryway and introduced me to him. He looked a little older than me and asked if I liked video games. Of course, I said yes. He grinned and invited me over to his place to play Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas. I didn't have that game yet, so I jumped at the chance. We walked to his house at the far end of the block. I remember how out of place it looked. Same size as the others, but the lawn was dead, just 2 big patches of cracked dirt, no grass, no flowers, nothing. The front door paint was peeling. Inside? It was worse. Boxes and junk lined the hallways. The air was thick with a musty, cat litter kind of smell, but I never saw a single cat. He led me down to the basement, and it was disgusting. Clutter everywhere, old food containers, stained furniture. Still, I sat on the cracked leather couch across from a small TV. He had a GameCube and a PS2. We booted up San Andreas in 2-player mode, and honestly, it was fun. For a while, I thought I might actually like hanging out with him. After 2 hours, I told him I needed to head home. He didn't take it well. He walked halfway with me, not saying much. I gave a polite "see you later," hoping he'd get the hint. That clinginess? It was the first red flag. The next day, Alex rang the doorbell again and asked if I could come play. This time, we stayed in my room and played GameCube. I was starting to feel uneasy around him. He stood too close, stared too long. The energy was just off. The next afternoon, he showed up again. I told my mom to say I wasn't feeling well. Later that day, I biked over to Danny's place, hoping he'd want to hang out. He did. We rode up the block together, and as we passed Alex's house, we saw him dart out onto the porch. Like he'd been waiting. It got awkward. I had just told him I was sick, and now he saw me riding around. I whispered to Danny that I'd hung out with that kid and that something felt off. Danny stopped his bike and gave me this look like I'd said something crazy. "You hung out with Alex?" he asked. "Dude, that family is nuts. He's not even your age, he's like 12. That was the last time I willingly interacted with Alex. That weekend, he rang our doorbell again. I had already warned my mom to say I wasn't home. She did. But that night, something happened that still gives me chills. I woke up to a cold breeze brushing across my face. My bedroom window was wide open, and I know I closed it. I sat up, confused. That's when I felt a nudge on my foot. I froze. Then screamed. At the foot of my bed, crouched low like he didn't want to be seen, was Alex. "Shoo," he whispered. "It's just me." Before I could even yell, he explained that his parents were fighting and he needed somewhere to sleep. He said he climbed through my window. I told him to get out. He begged to stay. I said no again. Watching him silently crawl back out the window and disappear into the night? That image is burned into my brain. I slammed the window shut and locked it, then sprinted to my parents' room. They were stunned. The next morning, they marched down to his house. When they returned, they looked defeated. His mom, they said, had laughed in their faces, actually laughed. She claimed Alex was just a lonely kid with a big imagination. No apology. No ownership. They didn't want to escalate things. I guess because he was a kid. But a few nights later, I woke up to soft knocks at my window. Over and over. I had the blinds down, but I knew it was him. The tapping turned to rattling, like someone was testing the lock. My heart raced. I stayed still, listening. Eventually, it stopped. I told my parents, but they just told me to ignore it. A few days later, I was riding bikes with Danny and another new friend from school. We cruised down the block, and sure enough, as we passed Alex's house, we saw him standing in the window, just watching us. Still. Like a statue. I told my friends what had happened. They were horrified, but also couldn't help but laugh at how messed up it all was. That night, everything changed. I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. I screamed as I saw Alex's arms scratched, shirt dirty, forcing himself through my now broken bedroom window. The blinds tore apart as he stepped into my room. I bolted. My parents were up in seconds. By the time my dad got outside, Alex had already fled, disappearing into the shadows. My dad followed him back to his house, yelling the whole way. He banged on their door until they finally answered. Whatever my dad said that night worked. They agreed to pay for the window as long as the police weren't called. And they did. That was the last time Alex came near me. I still saw him a couple of times after that. Just standing on the porch, staring as we drove by. Eventually, they moved. Thank God. Sometimes I still wonder what Alex would have done if I hadn't screamed that night. Would he have hurt me? What kind of kid breaks into a house through a second-story window twice? Just because someone doesn't want to be their friend? I try not to think about it too much. But some nights, when I hear the wind tapping the windows, it all comes back. Hey everyone! I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. Let me tell you about the ski trip that changed the way I see people forever. It was my first real skiing trip. My friends and I had been talking about it for months. There were 4 of us, Megan, Claire, Riley, and me. We flew into Salt Lake City, Utah, and rented a cozy Airbnb cabin just outside a town called Timber Ridge, nestled near the edge of Wasatch Mountain State Park. It was the kind of place you'd see on a postcard: snow-dusted rooftops, winding pine-lined roads, and a ski resort just 20 minutes up the road. I'd only tried snowboarding once before. I was awful at it, spent most of my time falling face-first on a bunny slope. So I wasn't expecting to impress anyone. From the airport, we grabbed a lift straight to the cabin. It was a charming, rustic 4-bedroom log house with a massive wraparound deck and a hot tub that overlooked the snowy hills. Since it was already nighttime by the time we arrived, it was a Thursday, we dropped our bags and hit up a little local bar. The kind with neon signs buzzing in the windows and pool tables in the back. The next morning, we headed to the ski resort. Rented all our gear right there, which was convenient. It wasn't very busy, most folks were probably working. That changed on Saturday. Suddenly, there were families, college kids, pros flying down the runs like it was second nature. Meanwhile, I was still crashing every 50 feet. After a few failed runs, I sat off to the side of one of the blue trails to catch my breath. That's when I noticed this guy approaching, not gracefully. He looked just as lost on a board as I was. He stopped next to me and asked if I was okay, then started small talk. I answered a couple of questions, but it felt strange. We were sitting in snow, wind howling, while people zoomed past us. I told him I was good and tried to end the conversation. He gave this awkward laugh, and I got back up, determined to make it to the bottom this time. I snowboarded a little better, maybe because I just wanted to get away. But then, a few hundred feet down, I stopped again, and sure enough, he showed up. Again. He sat near me this time, unstrapped his board, and said something like, "Not used to seeing many pretty girls up here." Weird thing was, I had on a full ski mask and helmet. Barely any of my face was showing. He asked if I was there alone. I said I was with my boyfriend, total lie. He laughed and said he saw me arrive with all girls. I didn't hide my disgust. I literally said "ew" out loud, strapped back in, and took off. I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly found my balance like never before. It felt like adrenaline kicked in, or maybe just fear. I got to the bottom, straight into the lodge, and grabbed a table to call my friends. Claire picked up first. I told her everything and begged her to come sit with me. A few minutes later, she found me. I'd already texted our group chat, saying we should leave. It was around 3 p.m. anyway, we'd been on the slopes for hours. When Megan and Riley came back from their run, we all returned our rentals and called a ride back to the cabin. We each showered, changed, and went into the village for dinner. That turned into bar hopping. We got pretty tipsy. Laughing. Letting loose. Trying to forget. Back at the cabin later that night, we all piled into the hot tub, drinks in hand, steam rising into the freezing air. For a while, it felt perfect, just 4 friends laughing in the middle of nowhere, under a sky full of stars. Eventually, we went to our separate rooms. Everyone crashed. Except me. I've always had trouble sleeping. I stayed up, buzzed and scrolling through TikTok, headphones in, completely relaxed. Until I heard footsteps. Hardwood floors creaking in the hallway. At first, I figured someone needed water or was heading to the bathroom. But then, I heard my doorknob jiggling, slow and quiet at first. My stomach dropped. I sat up in bed, pulling my headphones off. I almost called out to one of the girls but stopped myself. Why would they try to come into my room? I grabbed my phone and texted the group chat, "Is someone outside my door?" No response. I crept to the door, pressed my ear against it. More footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I carefully unlocked the door and cracked it open, just enough to peek into the hallway. That's when I saw him. A tall shadow. Male. Walking from one bedroom to the next, trying each doorknob. I didn't scream. I was frozen. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it over the silence. I closed the door and locked it again, firmly this time. Then I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Whispered every word to the dispatcher. Then, light tapping on my door. The handle turned, again. But it didn't open. I whispered into the phone, "He's at my door. Please hurry." The woman on the other end stayed calm. Officers are on the way. Stay quiet. Stay locked in. The door shook. He was trying to push it open now. That's when I lost it. I screamed, "Get out of here!" I'm on the phone with 911. He stopped. A moment passed, and then I heard him say, in a disturbingly calm voice, "Okay, sweetheart." Then footsteps, fading down the hall. I stayed on the phone. My friends were awake now. Some had heard me scream, others heard the banging. I texted again, telling them to stay locked in. 5 minutes later, red and blue lights flashed through the windows. The cops came in through the still unlocked front door. They swept the place and confirmed the man was gone. They helped us check every window, every lock. Then they left. We didn't sleep. I kept thinking back to the guy from the mountain. His voice. His build. His timing. I can't prove it was him, but my gut tells me it was. The next morning, we reached out to the Airbnb host and managed to get a partial refund. We didn't go back to the slopes. Instead, we explored nearby towns, booked a cheap motel for our final night, and tried to make the best of it. We flew home that Monday. Growing up, whenever I got scared, my dad used to say, "Don't fear ghosts. It's the living you need to watch out for." He wasn't wrong. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. After my dad took his life, I inherited more than just his money. I inherited his memories, his grief, and a cabin tucked away in the snowy stillness of Pine Hollow, Oregon, just outside of Bend, nestled near the quiet shadows of Mount Washington. My mom had been trying to sell the cabin ever since the funeral. The mortgage was too much, and short-term renters barely helped. The paperwork was almost done, and the realtor said it had hit the market in less than a month. In the meantime, it was going to sit empty. I took that as a sign. I dropped my part-time job, packed up my snowboard and some winter gear, and loaded my dad's old Jeep with a week's worth of food, cigarettes, and enough bourbon to forget what day it was. Midnight, my black lab jumped into the back seat without hesitation. For the first couple days, everything felt calm. I'd ride the slopes in the morning, throw snowballs for midnight in the yard, and spend the evenings curled up with my old PlayStation and DVDs. The cabin was exactly how I remembered it: 2 stories, creaky stairs, old pinewood floors, and a stone fireplace that crackled just right. The kitchen was small, barely enough for one person, and the upstairs had 2 guest rooms I never used. I kept their doors closed and spent all my time between the master bedroom, the living room, and the balcony off the upstairs suite. On the 3rd day, the snow came in heavy, blanketing everything in a fresh layer of white. I stayed inside most of the afternoon, sipping whiskey, watching movies, and petting Midnight. But by mid-afternoon, we went out for a quick bathroom break. That's when I noticed them, footprints in the snow. They were human. Barely an hour old, maybe less. The edges weren't soft yet, and the snow hadn't buried them. They circled the cabin, then trailed off into the dense forest that stretched behind the house. The nearest other cabins were spaced out, 2 of them, about a block apart, both empty for the season. Everything else was over a mile away. There was no reason anyone should be out here. I told myself maybe someone was checking on their property. Maybe they were squatters. Or maybe some hiker had gotten turned around. Still, it left me uneasy. Midnight sniffed the tracks but didn't bark. Just stood there, tail stiff, ears perked. That night, I went to bed early. Midnight jumped up next to me and curled up. I was halfway between sleep and dreams when his body tensed. In a flash, he jumped off the bed and sprinted downstairs. I sat up, holding my breath. The cabin was silent except for the sound of Midnight pacing, his nails clicking across the floor as he moved from window to window. Then he ran back upstairs and started pawing at the door, doing his little dance to be let outside. It was late, and I hesitated. But he looked anxious, more urgent than usual. So I grabbed his leash and flashlight and opened the front door. As soon as we stepped out, Midnight started pulling, his nose to the ground. He didn't want to pee. He wanted to go. He kept dragging toward the tree line, back to where the footprints had been earlier. But he also kept sniffing the siding of the house, pausing to stare up at the roof. When I wouldn't follow, he sat down and just stared. Dead still, ears high, eyes locked on the woods. I didn't hear anything. But the silence felt wrong. Not peaceful, expectant. Eventually, I pulled him back inside and locked the door. We headed back upstairs, and I tried to brush it off. Maybe it was a deer. Maybe a raccoon. But then I heard it. A pattern of thumps above my head, soft, spaced out, deliberate. It didn't sound like snow or ice. It sounded like footsteps. Heavy ones. 6 paces, slow, like someone walking across the roof. Midnight ran to the sliding door that led to the balcony, staring at it like he wanted out. I got dressed, lit a cigarette, and stepped outside with my flashlight. The wind cut hard, and the smoke stung my eyes. I swept the light across the roof, nothing. No marks in the snow. No signs of anything at all. But then, I saw it. Just past the balcony, about 20 feet away in a tall pine, something was crouched between 2 branches. My heart froze. It was man-shaped. But too tall. Way too tall. Its legs were bent deep, squatting on the branch, and its arms, long and pale, stretched up to grip the limb above. Its skin looked almost translucent in the moonlight. Its face, it had no emotion. Just an open mouth, wide and still, like it was caught mid-scream but made no sound. It didn't move. Didn't blink. Midnight started pacing behind me, a soft whimper escaping his throat. I didn't move either. I thought about shining the flashlight at it, but something deep inside screamed not to. Every instinct told me don't engage. Just don't. I backed into the room and dragged Midnight with me, then slammed the balcony door shut and locked it. I hesitated, then flicked the light at the tree one last time. It was gone. I closed the curtains, my heart still thudding. Midnight paced, uneasy. I tried to calm myself, turned the lights off, and got back into bed. But I couldn't sleep. Then the tapping started. Soft. Consistent. Like someone was tapping one finger on the glass of the sliding door. Tap. 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 It didn't stop. It went on for almost an hour. Midnight just sat there, watching the door from a distance. He wouldn't go near it. That's when it got worse. I felt drawn. Like something was whispering from the other side, inviting me to open it. The thought came unprovoked, just open the door. Over and over. But then I heard my father's voice in my head. Clear. Firm. Stay in bed. Don't open that door. I lay there, paralyzed. Torn between 2 urges, curiosity and survival. In the end, I listened to my dad. I stayed in bed. Eventually, the tapping stopped. I fell asleep with the flashlight in one hand and Midnight pressed against my side. And when I woke up the next morning, the snow outside was smooth again. But on the balcony, just outside the screen door, was a single long footprint, too long to be human. And pressed into the frost on the glass. 5 long finger marks. It didn't take me long to pack my stuff and get the hell out of there. My parents own a cabin in a quiet part of Pine Hollow, Oregon. It's the kind of place we mostly use in winter, perfect for snowboarding, skiing, or just escaping the noise of everyday life. The cabin's perched near the top of a ridge, wrapped in thick pine trees and miles away from the nearest gas station or coffee shop. The closest neighbors are technically down the road, but they're far enough away that you can't see a single rooftop through the woods. There's a large wooden shed out back where we keep all our snowboarding gear, firewood, and tools. We always lock it when we leave, but when we're staying there, we usually leave it open during our trip. No one really messes with anything out here. The cabin itself is pretty spacious. It's 3 levels, though the top floor is a private loft that my parents claim for themselves. My siblings and I were never allowed up there growing up. That weekend, I was heading up there with a girl named Emily. She'd never been snowboarding before, so I offered to teach her the basics. We had an old beginner board and extra gear already at the cabin. Since the property sits on a pretty steep hill, we built a small private slope years ago that we sometimes used for sledding or messing around. Before taking her to the nearby resort, I figured we'd warm up on that slope. We suited up and hiked to the top. I showed her how to shift her weight and glide slowly. Of course, her first attempt ended with her falling. But she laughed it off, got up, and kept trying. Each run, she improved, falling less and steering better. After about an hour, just as we were laughing and catching our breath at the bottom of the hill, we both froze. A man's voice came from the tree line. Just one word. Hello. We snapped our heads toward the woods. All we saw were rows of silent trees and the smooth white blanket of untouched snow. You'd think with the snow it'd be easy to spot someone, but there was no one. I shouted, "Hey, someone there?" But nothing came back. Just silence and that strange heavy feeling you get in winter air when everything is still. We looked at each other, confused but trying not to show it. I figured it might have been a hiker. Someone lost or maybe just weird. That was the least creepy possibility. We went back up to the cabin and locked the door behind us. Later, we drove down to my favorite diner in town, had burgers, and picked up groceries for the weekend. When we got back, we grilled out back and sat by the fire pit. We played some music, just soaking in the quiet. But then, soft crunches in the snow nearby. Footsteps. I paused the music. But the crackling fire made it hard to hear. A few more steps, then silence again. I borrowed Emily's phone and turned both flashlights on. I scanned the tree line. Nothing but shadows. Still, I yelled out, "Who's out there?" It spooked her. She asked to go inside. We didn't step back outside the rest of that night. The next morning, I woke up just as Emily was getting out of bed. I rolled back over. When I woke up again, she was still gone. The house was quiet. I stretched, checked the time, 9 a.m., then pulled open the curtains to the back window. I had a clear view of the shed. The door was wide open. And then I saw it. Puffs of breath, soft clouds, coming from just behind the shed door. Someone was standing there. Naturally, I figured it was Emily. So I leaned out the window and called, "Emily?" But then, her voice called back from inside the house. She was in the living room. I froze. I didn't move. I just stared at that foggy breath hanging in the air. Whoever it was didn't move either. I yelled again, "Hey! Who's in my shed?" Then slammed the window shut and rushed into the living room. She stood stiff in front of the couch, clutching a mug of tea, face pale. I peeked out the back door and just barely caught the figure of someone dressed in all black darting into the woods. I scrambled for my boots, but by the time I pulled them on, he was gone. I checked the shed, nothing missing. I relocked it this time. I followed the footprints for a few feet. They came from the forest, to the shed, and back again. I wasn't about to follow them deeper. We tried to brush it off and had breakfast. Then we headed out to the main mountain for the day. Honestly, she was picking up snowboarding faster than I thought, and it helped lighten the mood. We agreed to hit the slopes again the next day. That night, we stayed in. Cooked up steaks. Watched a movie. No sitting out by the fire this time. But sometime after midnight, I felt her shaking me awake. She whispered something, then paused. Listen. I held my breath. Then, faint and chilling, help me. A long, breathy voice dragged out from outside. She clutched me tight, tears already running down her cheeks. It came again. I walked over to the window. She begged me not to open the curtain. I said I just wanted to peek. I lifted one tiny corner and saw nothing but darkness. Still, I cracked the window just enough to listen. A gust of cold air rushed in. And then rapid footsteps in the snow. They were getting closer. Fast. I slammed the window shut and locked it. Seconds later, knocking. Slow and deliberate. I looked at her. She was under the blanket, silently crying. Don't say a word, I whispered. No more knocks followed. No more voices. Just the fire crackling downstairs and the wind brushing snow off the roof. We stayed like that for hours, drifting in and out of exhausted sleep. When morning came, I checked around the house. Footprints. Everywhere. Encircling the entire cabin. Like someone or multiple people had been walking from window to window all night. That was it. We packed. I relocked the shed. Loaded up the car. And headed back to Providence before noon. Nothing was ever stolen. Nothing was damaged. But the next time we went up there, months later, my dad checked the place and said everything was untouched. So what did they want? I still don't know. But I know they watched us. And I know they were already there, the minute we arrived. Before we get into tonight's story, a quick thank you to Fume for sponsoring this video. If you're trying to break a bad habit, yeah, that one you just thought of, Fume has a gentle, all-natural way to help. They've created a flavored air device that doesn't use electronics, vapors, or harmful chemicals, just natural, tasty flavors in a super sleek, fidget-friendly design. You can even rest it on the base, their magnetic stand that launched this January. I personally like crisp mint, but orange vanilla is a close second. Fume's already helped over 150,000 people swap out their bad habits for something simple and guilt-free. So head over to tryfume.com/nightmare, or scan the QR code on screen, and use code NIGHTMARE to get 10% off your journey pack today. Alright. Now let's talk about the delivery I made one cold November night. It was supposed to be my last run of the shift. I was working at a local pizza place in northern Pennsylvania. The place was called Red Jack's Pizza, a little family-owned spot in a town called Millridge. My night shift manager, Frank, was always the one assigning deliveries. That night, he handed me a slip for 2 large pepperoni pizzas, with a name and a phone number scribbled on it. This was back in 2009. I didn't have a smartphone, just a cheap flip phone with no GPS, and no Garmin either. I still used an old spiral-bound street atlas for directions. The address was on something like Willows Hollow Road, out in the middle of nowhere. I don't remember the exact house number or the customer's name. What I do remember is struggling to find the place. Millridge has stretches of dense woods and farmland, and the farther you drive out, the darker and more silent it gets. There were no streetlights. No houses for what felt like miles. Just pitch-black woods and the occasional mailbox reflecting my headlights. I must have pulled over at least twice to turn on the overhead light in my car and double-check the map. After another 10 minutes of driving in circles, I finally called the number on the order slip. It rang. And rang. And rang. Just when I was about to hang up, someone picked up. But they didn't say anything. So I spoke first. Hey, this is the pizza guy. I'm having a hard time finding your place. After a pause, I heard the pizza guy in a low, slow voice. like he was repeating it to himself. His tone was flat, emotionless, almost sleepy. He told me his driveway was just a dirt trail, easy to miss, and gave me some landmarks to look for. You'll see an old mailbox rusted at the base, just after a road bend. I followed the directions, and sure enough, there it was. I turned onto a thin dirt path almost hidden between the trees. I drove slowly up the path for about half a minute before I saw it, a small, sagging one-story house tucked between tall trees. The place looked like it hadn't been painted in decades. There was a dim orange glow behind the curtains of one window, the only sign of life. I pulled in next to a dented pickup truck. No other cars. I grabbed the 2 pizzas and walked up the uneven wooden steps to the front door. There wasn't a doorbell, so I knocked. Inside, I could hear faint music, something old, maybe a record playing. After a few seconds, the music got lower. I heard footsteps. Then they stopped. The door opened, just a crack. A single eye peeked out at me through the gap, just one eye, staring. I smiled awkwardly and said, "Hey, pizza delivery?" The person whispered, "Oh yes, the pizza." Same voice as the call. Cold. Hollow. There was a long pause, too long. I cleared my throat. Do you have the cash?" He said, "Yes." "I'll go get it." Then I heard his steps slowly retreating across the creaky floorboards. What happened next? Well, let's just say, I wish I had left those pizzas on the porch and driven off. But I didn't. And that's when things started to feel wrong. Red circle, red circle, red circle. Would you have waited on that porch? Or left? Let me know in the comments if you've ever had a delivery experience that felt just a little too strange. There was this old music playing, something that sounded straight out of the 1930s. It made the whole place feel even weirder, like I'd stepped into some forgotten corner of time. The door inched open on its own, slowly revealing more of the dim room inside. The air felt still and thick. Everything I saw looked like it hadn't been touched in decades. There were rusted metal sheets haphazardly laid across the floor, probably to cover up rotted wood. A sagging couch sat in the center like it had given up trying to hold itself together. The rest of the furniture wasn't any better. Each piece looked like it had been rescued from a haunted museum. The music was coming from one of those old phonographs, the kind with the big brass horn curling out of the top. That was all I could see from where I was standing, just peeking in and trying to get a read on the place. But then there was the smell. It hit me slow at first, like mildew, then stronger, like something sour and dead. My stomach turned. Still, I waited for the guy to come back with the cash. After a few awkward minutes, I knocked lightly on the open door and called out, "Sir?" His voice drifted back from another room, calm and strange. "Yes, would you mind coming into the kitchen, please?" That set off something in my gut. My manager at Ridgeway Pizza always told us never to step into a customer's home unless we had to. And something about this house, this whole situation, felt way off. I hesitated and said, "Sorry, could you repeat that?" And again, that same tone, "Can you come to the kitchen, please?" I stepped inside, and right away I felt the floor sink under my feet. The boards creaked like they could give at any second. Everything in that house was narrow and long, like a tunnel. Straight ahead to the right was a kitchen doorway. That's where his voice had come from. But to the left, there was a skinny hallway. Along one side, a few doors. And at the very end of the hall, someone was standing. Or moving? He was dancing. Slowly. Alone. His back was turned, and he was swaying, almost in slow motion, rubbing his arms and chest with his hands in this sensual, uncomfortable way. I can't explain it well, but it felt wrong. Not just odd, disturbing. In any other setting, I might have laughed. But here? In this silent, stinking house with old-time music playing? No. I felt cold. I turned back toward the kitchen, still clutching the 2 pizza boxes like they were the only normal things I had left. As I took a couple of cautious steps forward, I saw a face peeking around the wall separating the kitchen from the living room. Just an eye and part of his cheekbone. It was the same guy who answered the door before, same calm, blank expression. Just watching. All I could think was, what the hell is happening? I cleared my throat and asked again, "Sir, do you have the cash?" No answer. Just this low, breathy giggle. It didn't even sound human, it was too low, too slow. But it was so faint I second-guessed myself. Then he suddenly called out in a loud, sharp voice, "Randall!" I jumped. His tone changed completely. It was no longer calm, it was commanding. Angry. Echoing through the narrow walls. That was it. I was done. I turned around and headed for the door. I passed the hallway and caught a glance over my shoulder. The man at the end, the one who was dancing, he wasn't dancing anymore. He was just standing there. Still. Silent. Staring right at me. I didn't wait. I walked straight out the front door and shut it behind me, trying not to slam it even though every part of me wanted to run. I rushed back to my car, still holding the pizza boxes like a moron. I tossed them into the passenger seat, climbed in, and started backing out. The guy's beat-up old truck was still in the driveway, so I had to do a 3-point turn to get out. As I looked back one last time, the front door was open again. Wide open. My heart started racing. I imagined one of them standing beside my car, maybe even reaching for the handle. I didn't look. I just floored it back down the gravel driveway and got out of there fast. Back at the shop, I called Frank and told him everything. He didn't sound mad, just kind of stunned. When I walked inside with the uneaten pizzas, everyone burst out laughing. It's funny how things sound harmless when you tell the story out loud. But it didn't feel funny in the moment. That house, that man, none of it felt real. And whatever they were doing, I don't think they wanted pizza. I've had dreams since then where I see that same face peeking around a wall, just staring with one eye. Waiting. Hey everyone. I put a lot of effort and heart into creating these videos just for you. If you're enjoying the content, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a quick comment below and let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. Your support means the world to me, and it keeps me motivated to bring more awesome videos your way. Let me tell you why I never step inside anyone's house when doing food deliveries anymore. I'm 20 now, but this happened last year when I was 19. I live in a small, laid-back town called Pine Hollow, nestled in the heart of Pennsylvania. For most of the year, it's peaceful until spring and fall roll in and the students from Ridge Valley University flood the streets. The college is well known across the state, not just for academics, but for being one of the rowdiest party schools you'll ever hear about. When students return, everything changes. The quiet streets buzz with music, laughter, and chaos. I work as a bicycle delivery guy for Steady Slice, a local pizza shop that stays open ridiculously late to cater to those college night owls. I still work there today. This story happened on a Tuesday or Wednesday night, sometime in late April or early May, right near finals week. My shift started at 7 p.m. and ended at 2 a.m., and it was a typical night drunk college kids crowding the place, trying to soak up their alcohol with pizza and wings. Orders were flying in non-stop. It was annoying, sure, but the tips were worth it. I remember it clearly because it was supposed to be my last delivery of the night. Just as 2 a.m. was creeping up and I was getting ready to head home, another order popped up in the system. I was next on the rotation, which pissed me off. I was dead tired and just wanted to collapse into bed. But I didn't have a choice. I recognized the street right away, Maple Hollow Lane, just a few blocks from campus. I hopped on my bike and pedaled hard, hoping to finish the delivery fast. One thing to note, we do bicycle deliveries because when school's in session, traffic in Pine Hollow becomes a nightmare. Biking's quicker most nights, especially when weaving between bar crowds and street closures. I got to the house in under 10 minutes. It was one of those college rentals, beat-up siding, solo cup debris in the yard, porch lights flickering. I knocked on the door, loud and firm. No answer. I knocked again, harder. Still nothing. Annoyed, I pulled out my phone and dialed the number on the receipt. Straight to voicemail. I was getting ready to call the shop when I heard something. Rustling. From the bushes across the street. I paused, thinking it might be the wind. But something felt wrong. I glanced over casually, and that's when I saw him. A man. Crouched low behind a line of bushes in someone's yard across the street. I couldn't make out his face, but I knew he was watching me. His shape was still, too still. And even though I tried to play it cool, my heart started hammering. He didn't move. Just stared. I turned back toward the door and knocked again, louder this time. Nothing. Was this a setup? Was I being lured here? My instincts were screaming at me to leave, but I didn't want to bail on the order just yet. I risked another glance. He was still there. Still watching. I kept knocking like crazy, borderline punching the door, desperate for anyone, to answer. Finally, I heard groggy footsteps from inside. The door cracked open, revealing a guy who looked half asleep and fully irritated. When I told him about the order, he blinked in confusion. I didn't order anything, he mumbled. Must have been my roommate. He shuffled back inside to check. I stayed on the porch, nerves spiking. I turned again. The man behind the bushes had moved closer. Not a lot, but enough. He was just a few feet closer to the sidewalk now, crouched just like before. Still watching. I wanted to bolt, but I couldn't just leave my bike. If I went inside the house, I'd be leaving it out in the open. And if this guy was after it or after me, I didn't know what he'd do. After a minute, the guy returned. Roommates passed out drunk upstairs. Doors locked. Won't wake up. I begged him to just sign for the food. He hesitated, there wasn't a tip included. I didn't care about that. I pushed the receipt toward him until he scribbled his signature. Thanks, I muttered, handing him the bag and already backing away. He shut the door. I turned, walked to my bike, kicked up the stand. And then I heard it. Footsteps. Running. Fast. From behind. I turned sharply, the man had launched out of the bushes. He was sprinting toward me, maybe 30 feet away. He was wearing jeans, scuffed boots, a black hoodie with the hood pulled up, and what looked like a mask covering his face. I only saw his eyes, and maybe it was the lighting, but I swear he was holding something metallic. A blade? I didn't stick around to confirm. The road ahead was blocked by parked cars. Behind me? Dead ends. My only hope was a nearby bike trail that cut through the woods back toward the main road. It was pitch dark, but I knew the path like the back of my hand. I shoved off and pedaled harder than I ever had in my life. The trees swallowed me whole as I entered the trail. No lights. Just cold wind, branches creaking, the sound of my wheels grinding the gravel. I kept glancing behind me, but he wasn't there. Or maybe he was. Every sound felt like a chase. Every shadow felt like a figure. By the time I shot out of the trail and back onto the street, I was breathless, chest heaving. I didn't stop until I reached the back door of the shop. I tossed my bike against the wall and collapsed against it, hands shaking. I didn't tell my manager. Didn't call the cops. What could I say? I never saw his face. Never got a clear look. He could have been anyone. I just clocked out, packed up, tossed my bike in my trunk, thank God I drove that night, and went home. I locked every door and window. Double-checked them. Slept with the lights on. Never saw him again. I still don't know what he wanted. To rob me? Hurt me? Something worse? I haven't worked a closing shift since that night. And now, whenever I do night deliveries, I carry a pair of nunchucks in my backpack. Just in case. I hope I never need to use them. But sometimes, when I'm biking through town at night, I swear, I still feel someone watching. Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. I used to think Pine Hollow, Oregon was a quiet, sleepy little place where nothing bad ever really happened. I was wrong. What happened to me out there changed how I see everything, how I think about safety, and how quickly things can go from normal to terrifying. Back then, I was doing deliveries for DoorDash and Uber Eats. I had just graduated from college and was buried in student loan debt. Living with my mom and trying to save money, I picked up every gig I could, especially at night when pay was better and the streets were empty. It was late, probably close to midnight, when I picked up a fast food order from a drive-thru on the south side of Bend. The delivery address was in Pine Hollow, about a 20-minute drive away, out past where the streetlights stop and the forests begin. That part of Oregon can get real dark at night. Once I passed the last gas station, the roads were empty. Thick pines lined the sides, and there were no other cars. My GPS led me down a narrow side road with a dead-end sign. That's where the house was. It was the last one on the street, completely swallowed by trees. No lights. Not on the porch, not in the windows, not even a faint glow from a TV inside. I kept my headlights on just to see the path and used my phone flashlight to find the walkway. The grass was tall, overgrown, brushing against my shins. There was something off about the whole place. I knocked on the door, since I didn't hear a bell when I pushed the button. The delivery wasn't marked for leave at the door, which meant I needed to hand it off in person. I messaged the customer through the app and asked if I had the right house. They replied almost instantly, "Give me a second." I waited, staring at the still dark windows. Something didn't feel right. I messaged again, "Can you confirm your address?" The response came a moment later, "I see you. You're at the right house." That's when it really started to click in my head. There were no cars in the driveway. No motion. No sound. I asked, "What kind of car do you see outside?" They replied, "I see your light." That confirmed I was at the right place, but it didn't calm my nerves. I took a slow step back from the door, not wanting to be standing too close if someone suddenly swung it open. But the door never opened. I kept messaging, and there was no reply. I thought maybe it was just a scam to get free food. That was until I heard a man's voice from somewhere in the darkness whisper, "Over here." I spun around, waving my flashlight through the trees and down the side of the house. Nothing. I called out, "I'm leaving the food on the porch," trying to keep my voice calm but firm. Still, no reply. No figure emerged. Just the same still darkness. I turned to walk back to my car, keeping a steady pace, didn't want to run, didn't want to draw attention. But when I got there, I heard it. That sickening hisses sound. Air leaking. I looked down, my front tire was slashed. I checked the back. That one too. My heart dropped. I hurried into the car and locked the doors. The dash lit up with all 4 low tire pressure warnings. My hands were shaking. Do I call the cops and stay in the car? Or do I run into the dark and hope to find help? I was leaning toward the second option. I turned off my headlights so I wouldn't be a beacon. I was just about to step out when I saw someone standing inches away from my window. I let out a scream that scraped from my throat like it was torn out. Then I saw the others. One at each window. 4 of them. All wearing masks. I was surrounded. One of them banged on the window and shouted, "Get out now!" I didn't know if any of them had a gun. With 4 slashed tires, I couldn't drive even if I tried. I called out, "Do you just want money? I'll give you everything I have." One of them nodded and said, "Give us everything, and we'll let you go." I agreed, shaking. I unlocked the door. The second I did, one of them yanked it open and pulled me out hard onto the ground. They kicked me, punched me, took everything. My phone. My watch. My shoes. Even my wallet and some stuff from my glove box. When they were done, they ran back into the woods, gone like shadows. I was left in the dirt, bleeding and half-conscious. I must have blacked out. When I came to, I was still next to the car. Maybe 30 minutes had passed, I don't know for sure. They even took my car keys. I got up, limping, and followed the faint glow of a porch light up the street toward the main road. I reached a small house and rang the bell over and over. A woman answered from behind the door, cautious. I told her I'd been attacked and needed to call the police. Thankfully, she believed me. She passed me a cordless phone through a crack in the door. I called 911. Then I called roadside assistance. Then I called my mom. The police arrived within 20 minutes. They took a report and had my car towed. My mom came out and took me home. The next day, detectives followed up with me. They were able to trace the Uber Eats account back to a guy named Logan, but he claimed his phone and wallet had been stolen days before. Whoever had his stuff used his account to set me up. The house I delivered to? Vacant. For sale. No cameras. No neighbors. No leads. They got away with everything. Insurance covered the tires, but not the rest. I lost a lot that night, my belongings, my sense of safety, and my peace of mind. It taught me a hard lesson, even in places that seem safe, darkness can find you. I stopped delivering for a while after that. Eventually, I went back to it, but only in the daytime. But here's something that often gets overlooked in those early college years: your scent. The way you smell plays a bigger role than you think when it comes to first impressions. Whether you're walking into a class, a job interview, or a party, people notice. Smelling bad is a surefire way to make others pull away. That's where Scentbird comes in. Scentbird is a monthly fragrance subscription that lets you try out a huge range of high-end colognes and perfumes from big names like Gucci, Prada, Versace, and Tom Ford, all for just $17 a month. No need to buy those expensive full-sized bottles anymore. Each scent comes in a sleek 30-day supply bottle, perfect for travel or your dorm shelf. This month, I received Eros Flame by Versace, Cross River Gorilla by Sanctuary, For Men Black Edition by Bentley. Each one even comes with a card that describes the fragrance's vibe and notes. And if you're not sure which one fits your lifestyle best, Scentbird's quick quiz will guide you to the perfect match in under a minute. If you're interested, scan the QR code or click the link below and use code NIGHTMARE55 for 55% off your first month. Now, let's get into the story. My name's Chuck, and I graduated from Arizona State University in 2016. College was everything I hoped for. I was in a fraternity, I kept up with classes, and had a blast meeting people, especially women. I still keep in touch with my old frat brothers, and just recently got engaged to Rosie, who I actually met during my sophomore year. But if you had asked me about ASU during my first year there, my answer would have been very different. The story I'm about to share is the reason why. I wasn't exactly an overachiever in high school. So when I landed at ASU, surrounded by students talking about internships and startups, it felt like I'd stepped into another world. Everyone seemed obsessed with building their resumes, growing their LinkedIn, and planning out the next 2 decades of their lives at age 18. It was intense. I caved into the pressure and started crafting the perfect online image. I remember agonizing over my LinkedIn page like my life depended on it. The idea that a few keywords or who I connected with could make or break my future was overwhelming. Still, I played along. I ticked all the boxes, joined the right clubs, and started applying for internships. A few weeks into the semester, I got a notification that made my heart race. It was an email from what looked like a top-tier business consulting firm. And it wasn't just a generic message. This one felt personal, tailored. Like they had actually read my profile. I double-checked. Then triple-checked. It looked legit. After some quick back and forth, they invited me to a first-round interview. I prepped like crazy. Watched videos, read up on case studies, and practiced all the common questions. Then I got an email from the person who'd be interviewing me. Armand Slowinski. That name is forever burned into my memory. Naturally, I wanted to know more about who I'd be meeting. So I searched for Armand on LinkedIn. Nothing. No profile. No online presence at all. It was weird. I figured maybe he was old school or just valued privacy. Then he sent the meeting location. A coffee shop in a quiet part of Tempe, about 15 minutes off campus. Not sketchy, but unusual. ASU had more than enough coffee shops nearby. Why would the meeting be so far out? I told my roommate, Riley, about it the night before. He immediately raised a red flag. He thought the whole thing was off and asked how I planned to get there. I said I'd call an Uber. But Riley insisted on driving me himself. He didn't have any plans and figured it'd be a quick trip. I appreciated it and said sure. At the time, I had no idea how lucky I was to have him come along. If Riley hadn't driven me, I might not be here to tell you what happened next. It was a little past 4 p.m. when Zach pulled up outside my dorm at Lakeside State College. I was nervous. This was one of my very first job interviews, and I didn't want to mess it up. I slid into the passenger seat, gave him a tight smile, and off we went. About 20 minutes later, I asked Zach to drop me off a block away from the location. I didn't want to show up looking like some kid who had to get a ride from a buddy. He nodded, then leaned over, smirking as he pulled a gallon-sized Ziploc bag of weed from the dashboard compartment. "I'll be here," he said. I shut the door behind me and walked toward the address I was given, an indie coffee shop I'd applied to a few days ago. But as I turned the corner, I froze. There was no cafe. Not even an empty one. Instead, there was a fenced-off construction site with dust blowing through the skeletons of half-demolished buildings. And stranger still, none of the surrounding buildings looked like shops or homes. It was all gray, private, shut down. Industrial. Empty. My chest tightened. I pulled out my phone and double-checked the address. It was correct. This whole block must have been torn down recently, so recent, even Google Maps hadn't caught up. I was just about to call Zach when I heard it. A deep, thunderous voice from behind. "Eli." I turned fast. Standing there was a freakishly tall man in a jet-black designer suit. For a second, I felt relief, maybe I wasn't being scammed. But his presence was so out of sync with the crumbling backdrop, it made the hair on my neck stand up. Next to him was a matte black Bentley that looked like it had never seen a drop of dust. He walked up, brow furrowed in polite confusion. We shook hands. When I asked about the non-existent coffee shop, he frowned and scratched his chin. "Yeah, weird. Didn't expect this either. You know what? Let's find another place to talk. Come on, ride with me," he said, motioning to the Bentley. Without waiting for an answer, he walked back to the car and called out, "Shotgun's yours." I hesitated, then followed, curiosity outweighing caution. As I rounded the back of the Bentley, I peeked through the rear window. That's when I saw him. Lying flat across the floorboards of the back seat was a man. Not sitting flat. Motionless. Barely visible in the shadows. In his hand, he gripped a long, metallic rod, some kind of tool or a weapon. Ice ran down my spine. I turned away and sprinted. Hard. The man in the suit shouted my name, but I didn't stop to look. I ran like my life depended on it, because maybe it did. Behind me, I heard tires screech. I risked a glance over my shoulder. The Bentley was whipping around the corner, its front end swinging toward me. My heart pounded in my throat. There was no way I could outrun a car on a straight road. And this part of town? No parks. No crowds. Just empty streets and blind turns. I reached the next intersection and faced a split-second decision. Left or right? Instinct made the call. I veered right. I tore down the block, lungs burning. 10 seconds, maybe less, and they'd be on me. But then, salvation. A fire escape. Low enough to reach. Without thinking, I jumped. My hands clamped onto the rusty bottom rung. I'd never done a pull-up in my life, but somehow I got up. 1 rung. 2. I climbed, feet slipping, muscles screaming. Below, the Bentley screeched to a halt. Right under me. I couldn't see the driver, but I knew he saw me. I kept climbing. Higher. Farther. Ready to fight if I had to. Then, nothing. The car idled for a beat that felt like forever. Then it rolled away. Smooth. Quiet. It turned left, vanishing down the road like it had never been there at all. I stayed frozen for a long time. Eventually, I pulled out my phone, hands shaking, and called Zach. When he picked up, I was practically yelling, stammering through the whole thing. He found me still crouched on that fire escape. I jumped down and got in the car, both of us silent as he drove. After that? Nothing much. I refused to talk about it, not even with Zach. I buried the memory like it was just some nightmare. But every now and then, usually when I'm lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, I remember it all. Every sound. Every glance. Every second. And it terrifies me how close I came to. I don't even know what. All I know is that it happened. Just a couple of weeks ago. My family was helping me move into college. I'm a freshman this year, and the drive out to Pine Hollow University, the small-town campus tucked in the woods of Vermont, felt like the start of something new. When we arrived, I found out I'd be living in a Jack and Jill-style dorm. That meant my room shared a bathroom with another one, so, 4 guys total, including me. I already knew one of them, Josh, from orientation. We hit it off during campus tour week. His roommate isn't part of this story, though. No. This story is about my roommate, Damon. Before move-in, we swapped socials. I messaged him on Instagram to get to know him. His replies were short. Robotic. His profile was full of anime edits, random Twitch clips, and unsettling captions. The kind of stuff you'd expect from a hardcore online gamer who never leaves his room. When we finally met in person, it was almost surreal. He looked like he hadn't seen daylight in years. Same height as me. Skinny. Pale. Peach fuzz mustache. I tried chatting, hoping maybe in person he'd warm up. Nope. He stuttered, kept avoiding eye contact, and ended conversations fast. He made me feel like I was the one invading his space. I even asked what kind of music he liked. He just said, "Music won't fill the cup of emptiness," and turned away. The first red flag? When he set up his PS5, he instantly launched into games. Not weird by itself, but how he gamed? That's what made my skin crawl. Damon would grunt and shake violently while playing. Sometimes he'd pull his legs into the desk cabinet, grabbing his feet and whispering to himself. I'd hear him repeat odd phrases twice, giggling under his breath. He never left the room. Never touched his homework. He just sat there, like a shadow glued to that chair. Trying to sleep next to all that? Nearly impossible. About a week in, I went out with a group from our dorm floor. We grabbed snacks, hung out in the lounge, and I didn't get back until around 1 a.m. I figured Damon was asleep, so I tried not to wake him. But as I reached for something in my cabinet, I got that weird goosebump sensation on my arms. Like someone was watching. I turned. Damon was staring at me. Eyes wide. Grinning slightly. I gasped and said, "Dude, what the hell? Why are you staring like that?" He chuckled and said, "Dark time," before rolling over to face the wall. It wasn't the last time, either. It happened 3 more times that semester. I asked the housing office if I could switch rooms, but they said there were no open dorms. I even tried moving into the other room that shared the bathroom, but one of the guys refused. So I was stuck. 3 months passed. I got used to tiptoeing around Damon's moods. Then one night, I came back from my late English class. I opened the door. Damon jumped up and blurted, "Why are you back early?" Thing is, I was late. So his panic? It made no sense. I asked, "You need the room?" He quickly posed like some anime villain and said, "No need to worry." I cringed. That's when I noticed a box on his desk. I asked what it was. He waved it off, "It's nothing." Whatever. I shrugged it off. But I was missing my iPhone charger and a pair of scissors, so I asked. He admitted he had them. As he handed me the charger, the cord accidentally knocked over the box. It spilled open. What fell out made my stomach twist. There was a sticky note with my name on it. Underneath, a clear plastic case. Inside were a pair of my socks, a disposable photo of me, a set of fake eyelashes, my old glasses. I stared in horror. He scrambled to pick it all up and started rambling about how it wasn't what it looked like. I shouted, told him to get out. He left. I immediately messaged my RA. He wasn't on duty but told me to save the box and show him tomorrow. That way, we'd have proof to file a formal report. So I hid the box deep in my laundry bin and tried to calm myself. But Damon came back an hour later. I told him, "Don't talk to me. Just stay on your side." We didn't say a word all night. I wanted to stay awake in case he tried looking for it. But after such a long day, I crashed sometime around 2 a.m. When I woke up, Damon was gone. For the first time, the room felt peaceful. Then I remembered the box. I rushed to my laundry bin. It was gone. Panic surged through me. My RA knocked soon after. I let him in, explained everything. He believed me, but without the box? There was nothing he could do. 5 hours later, Damon returned. I asked where he put the box. He tilted his head and smiled. "What box?" I begged him to stop pretending. He just laughed and said again, "I have no idea what you're talking about." I couldn't take it. I couldn't sleep. Couldn't study. Could barely think. That was last semester. Now it's spring, and yes, I'm still stuck rooming with him. He swore he'd never do anything like that again. Said if he ever felt weird urges, he'd come clean and we'd move out. I took his word. What choice did I have? But I stay out of the room as much as I can. because deep down, I'm still scared. I still don't understand why he had that photo of me. Why he took my socks. What those glasses were for. But the part that gets me every time? Those eyelashes. What were they doing in that box? Sorry to interrupt. If you're enjoying the story, let me know in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more. This happened to me during my freshman year at Northern Pines University in 2019. I've graduated now, but not a week goes by where I don't think about it, especially around Halloween. Back then, Halloween week was absolute chaos. I went to a big Midwest college where the party scene basically took over the town every October. Frat houses went all out with haunted themes, dive bars wouldn't let you in without a costume, and cops patrolled the streets like it was a full-on parade. It was wild, booze everywhere, people running from police, and enough memories to make you laugh and shiver at the same time. This all happened the Saturday after our team won a huge home game. Everyone was hyped. My friends and I were headed to an off-campus frat house known for throwing the craziest Halloween parties. My friend Emma was dating one of the football players, so we were guaranteed entry. We got there around 11 p.m., and it was pure madness. Shots were being passed like candy, music was blasting through the speakers, and everyone was chanting and cheering about the win. I was drinking, dancing, and just soaking it all in. It's important to mention, my phone died during the party. I had handed it off to Emma to keep in her crossbody bag for safekeeping. At one point, I told my friends I needed to use the bathroom and to meet me near the DJ booth when I got back. We were all super drunk by then. While I was in the bathroom, I suddenly heard someone yell, "Cops," and the entire place turned into a stampede. Screams echoed through the house. People tripped over furniture, bolted for the door, and vanished into the night. Flashing red and blue lights lit up the street like it was the 4th of July. The cops were already questioning frat members, and others were chasing after underage students who tried to flee. Somehow in the chaos, I realized I didn't have my phone. I was shouting for my friends but couldn't see a single familiar face. At that moment, I figured it was best to just leave and head back to campus. Only problem was, I didn't really know where I was. This particular frat house was deeper off campus, not in the cluster where most parties happened. I started walking, trying to follow street signs I didn't recognize. It was freezing cold, around 37 degrees, and I was still buzzed. But I was aware enough to know I needed a break. I spotted a brick building down the block with a faded plaque that looked familiar, maybe one of the old academic centers. I figured I'd duck in for a few minutes to warm up and get my bearings. I pushed the door, and it creaked open. The inside was dim. Only a few red exit signs lit the long halls. I wandered a bit, feeling warmer now, and sat against the wall. After a few minutes, my head started to clear. That's when it hit me, this wasn't an academic building. It smelled musty, and the floor was bare concrete. I stood up quickly and tried the main door again. It was locked. But, how? It opened just minutes ago. My stomach dropped. I looked around and spotted another door near the far end with an exit sign above it. I pushed through it, expecting cold air to rush in. Instead, I stepped into another room, smaller, bathed in a faint red glow. The air was damp. Steam hissed from a pipe along the wall. Chains hung from the ceiling, and something mechanical buzzed near the corner. It looked straight out of a horror film. Panicked, I tried to go back through the door I had just entered. Locked. My breath caught in my throat. My body slid down the wall as I tried not to cry. That's when I heard it. A heavy door slamming. Then footsteps. Slow, deliberate, and close. Another door slammed. More footsteps. Closer now. I held my breath and scanned the room. I saw another door just past the chains. Carefully, quietly, I tiptoed through the hanging links and clouds of steam, pushing the door open. Then I heard it. The door from the room I had just left opened again. The footsteps changed, they were faster now, purposeful. I didn't wait to see what or who it was. My adrenaline kicked in. I spotted a window covered in grime and frost. I charged at it and kicked. Once. Twice. It cracked. 3. 4. The glass buckled. Fifth kick, shatter. Right then, I heard someone sprinting. Big boots pounding against the floor. I barely had seconds. I climbed onto the ledge and jumped. I didn't realize the window was 10 feet off the ground. I landed hard right on top of 2 blue recycling bins. The pain jolted through me, but I pushed myself up, scrambled into the shadow of a pine tree, and crouched there, holding my breath. When I looked back at the window, I saw nothing at first. Just broken glass. Then, movement. A figure. Staring out. Scanning the lot. My heart nearly stopped. I stayed perfectly still, hidden beneath the branches. Then, as quietly as I could, I crept across the street and ran. Ran faster than I ever had before. Eventually, I recognized a street near my dorm. When I made it to my building, my friends were outside, frantic, nearly crying. They told me I'd been missing for almost 4 hours. I told them everything. They just stared, mouths open, speechless. Later, we looked into it. That building I entered? It had been abandoned for over 6 years. There was no staff, no faculty, no students ever assigned there. And definitely no reason for anyone to be inside. No record of police on site. No campus security. Whoever or whatever was in that building. It wasn't supposed to be. I still think about that night. About how lucky I was. How if I had moved a little slower, breathed a little louder, I might not be here. I never found out who that person was. But sometimes, when I walk near that part of town, I feel it again, that same pit in my stomach. Like I was being hunted. And I still wonder, what would have happened if that window hadn't broken? Before I tell you what happened, you need to know, I only worked one night as a home care aide for an older woman named Helen. Just one night. And after what happened, I never went back. Helen was 66 and had a developmental disability. Her daughter, Jessica, was in her 40s and worked night shifts at the local hospital in Pine Hollow, a quiet little town tucked between cold hills and empty woods. Jessica had hired me because she needed someone with medical experience to stay with her mom overnight. Maybe she didn't have other family. Or maybe she just didn't trust anyone else to care for Helen while she was gone. I'd already been working as a caregiver for 2 women with similar conditions, so I thought I knew what I was getting into. But I didn't. Not even close. Jessica gave me a quick tour, introduced me to Helen, and helped her settle into bed upstairs. Helen had smiled faintly at me, her eyes were a little blank, but kind. Jessica warned me that sometimes Helen would get up at night, disoriented. Not quite sleepwalking, but not fully awake either. It's part of her dementia, she said. If it happens, just gently walk her back to her room and sit with her until she's calm. No problem, I told her. I meant it. I'd handled worse. That night, around 9 p.m., I sat in the living room with a blanket over my lap, watching an old crime show. These overnight shifts usually meant a lot of quiet waiting. I actually looked forward to the stillness. An hour passed. Then I heard slow footsteps creaking from the floor above. I stood up and walked to the bottom of the stairs. Helen? I called softly. Do you need anything? No answer. Just footsteps moving back to her room, then a door closing. I figured maybe she'd gone to the bathroom. I sat back down and let the hum of the old radiator and flickering television settle me. Another hour went by. I got up to grab the sandwich I had packed, walked into the kitchen, opened the fridge, and turned back around with my plate. That's when I nearly screamed. Helen was standing right in the doorway. I dropped the plate. It shattered on the tile. I gasped, clutching my chest. "Helen! You scared me." But she didn't say anything at first. Her expression twisted. Then she shouted loud and wild, "Who are you? Why are you in my house?" I tried to speak calmly. "Helen, I'm your caregiver, remember? Jessica hired me to stay with you." But she kept yelling. "Get out! You don't belong here." I repeated my name and what I was doing there. Eventually, my voice got through. Her shoulders slumped a little, and she let me walk her back upstairs. I gave her a glass of water and her evening meds, melatonin and a low dose of clonazepam, like Jessica had explained. I stayed until she drifted off again. I was exhausted. Earlier that day I'd worked a full shift at my other job. There was a small spare room upstairs with a twin bed Jessica had told me I could use if I needed to rest. After checking that Helen was asleep, I finally let myself lie down. I don't remember falling asleep. I just remember waking up. It was a sound. Loud. Rhythmic. Slam. 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 Every second or two, something heavy hitting hard downstairs. I bolted upright. The bedroom door had been left open so I could hear if Helen moved. And clearly, she had. I slipped out of bed and padded quickly to the top of the stairs, heart racing. The sound was coming from the kitchen. I crept down, one careful step at a time, trying not to make a sound. My breath was shallow. The hallway was dark except for the dim yellow glow of a flickering bulb over the kitchen sink. I reached the bottom and leaned just enough to peek around the corner. And what I saw didn't feel real. It looked like something straight out of a horror movie, the kind that stays with you when you turn the lights off at night. I saw Emily in the dark kitchen. She was standing in front of the oven, opening it and slamming it shut over and over again. The sound echoed through the stillness like thunder in a cave. I could barely see her. Just a silhouette against the dim outline of the stovelight. It was pitch black in there. I called out, "Emily," loud enough to shake the silence. She froze. Slowly, she turned her head toward me, shut the oven door one last time, and began walking directly toward me and the staircase. My voice dropped to a soft, uneasy tone. "Hey, are you okay?" I asked. She got close enough that I could finally make out her face. Her expression was blank. Empty. She didn't answer. She just brushed past me and climbed the stairs. I followed her up, confused and honestly a little scared. As soon as she reached her bedroom, she slammed the door. I knocked gently. "Emily?" I whispered. "Are you all right?" No answer. I cracked the door open and peeked inside. She was standing stiffly at the far side of the bed, her back to me, facing the wall. Still. Not moving. I've seen a lot of strange behavior working night shifts, but this? This was like something straight out of The Conjuring. I walked in quietly, gently took her arm, and guided her into bed. She didn't resist. When she was lying down, I pulled the covers over her and whispered, "Good night, Emily," before softly closing the door. I crossed the hall into the guest room and got into bed. I tried to stay awake for a while, just in case she needed me again. I think I lasted maybe 20 minutes before sleep took over. I don't know how long I was out, but something woke me. The room was still pitch black. The small clock I had set to go off in an hour was silent. I blinked, trying to figure out what pulled me from sleep. Then I heard it. A soft thump. It was coming from the closet. I turned my head slowly. The closet door was slightly open, and in the narrow space between the frame and the door, I saw it. A shadow. Just the top part. Like a head. Watching me. I felt my chest lock up. "Emily?" I said, barely above a whisper. No answer. I said her name again. And again. And again. Finally, the door creaked open, and she stepped into the room, moving slowly, her face pale, eyes wide. She started saying it again. That same phrase from earlier. "Who are you?" "I don't know you." I sat up in bed, trying to calm her down. "Emily, it's me. It's okay. You know me." I reached toward the lamp and fumbled for the switch. When the light came on, I froze. Emily was holding a large kitchen knife. My whole body tensed. In that moment, everything shifted. This wasn't just sleepwalking. This was dangerous. She was dangerous. I shouted. A pure, panicked sound. Emily flinched but didn't drop the knife. Instead, she screamed back, louder, still repeating, "I don't know you." She stepped closer. There was no calming her now. This wasn't something I was trained to deal with. I quickly scanned the room, plotted the only path out, and leapt from the bed, running around the far side to avoid her. She screamed again, slashing at the air with the knife. It was slow. Clumsy. But she meant it. I bolted down the stairs, grabbed my shoes, and ran outside. Instead of calling 911, I called Lisa, her daughter. She had told me to contact her if there was ever an emergency. She answered yelling. I yelled too. I told her Emily came at me with a knife. That I didn't call the cops, even though I should have. Lisa had to leave work early. I waited outside, pacing, keeping an eye on the front door to make sure Emily didn't leave. When Lisa finally got home and went upstairs, Emily was back in her bed. Asleep. Peaceful. Like nothing had happened. Lisa didn't believe me, at least not at first. She said I must be exaggerating. But then she saw the knife, lying on the floor next to the bed. I didn't tell her I'd actually gone to sleep that night. Didn't want her thinking I was careless. But I also didn't feel like I'd done anything wrong. I followed her instructions. I protected myself. And I didn't bring in the police. She had even offered me that guest room to sleep in. I never went back to that house again. It was my first day on the job with Blue Oak Plumbing out in western Pennsylvania. I just left my job as a direct care aide after nearly a decade and was trying something new. I didn't expect my first plumbing call to be scarier than anything I'd faced in hospitals or nursing homes. The company only had 5 employees, and the owner, Mitch, decided who went where. Of course, I was handed a job way out in a broken-down stretch of road near a town called Hollow Creek. First assignment? Fix a leaky pipe under a sink. Supposed to be easy stuff. But the moment I pulled up to the house, I knew something was off. The house looked like it had been forgotten by time, peeling paint, boarded-up windows, and wild weeds crawling up the porch rails. It didn't even look like anyone lived there. I parked my van and knocked. After a moment, the door creaked open and a man stepped out. He was maybe in his late 40s, with thin, uncombed hair and this wide, unsettling smile that stretched too far across his face. It wasn't the smile that disturbed me, it was the way his eyes didn't match it. His voice? High-pitched and soft. Almost childlike. It didn't match his face or his body at all. Honestly, nothing about him felt right. He motioned for me to come in. The air inside was stale, musty, and cold. No furniture, no rugs, no signs of anyone living there. Just moved in? I asked. He giggled, not laughed, giggled. Yeah, he said. He led me into the kitchen. I set my tool bag down on the dusty counter and crouched beneath the sink. I began checking the P-trap and lock nuts, like usual. That's when I noticed he was standing directly over me, legs spread wide, feet on either side of my body. I was boxed in. Cornered. Trying to stay calm, I asked, "Mind giving me a little space?" He stepped back, barely. Not enough to put me at ease. I didn't see any leak. Not even a drop. I stood up and turned on the faucet. Nothing. Not a sound. No water at all. I turned to him. "Your water's shut off." He blinked and said, "Oh, must have turned off the main by mistake." Again, that weird, unnatural giggle. I stared at him. "How do you do that by accident?" He shrugged, still grinning, and said he'd go turn it back on. I watched him walk out of the kitchen, but then I heard footsteps going upstairs. I've been in hundreds of homes. The main water shutoff is never upstairs. A chill ran down my back. Then I heard it, more footsteps. Not one set. Multiple. Fast. Coming down the stairs like a stampede. My instincts screamed at me. I didn't wait. I grabbed my tools, bolted out the front door, and didn't stop until I was back in my van. I'm not a small guy, and I don't scare easy. But this wasn't fear of a fight. This was the kind of fear that comes from knowing something unnatural is nearby. I looked back once. The front door was still open. Nobody was standing there. But I swear, something was watching from the upstairs window. I drove off and called Mitch. Told him it must have been some kind of prank. That sounded better than saying, "I got the hell out of there because my gut told me to." Later that night, I did a little digging. That house? It had been vacant for over a year. The number that called us? It was a VoIP burner line. Couldn't trace it. No name. Nothing. I called the local police and reported it. Told them everything. They took it seriously, at least on the phone. Not sure if they ever did anything. But I know I never went back to Hollow Creek. I stayed with Blue Oak Plumbing for a year after that, but no job ever rattled me like that one. Some places just feel wrong. And some people? Some people aren't people at all.